That wasn't even the clap sync, because we don't do that because we're not professional. That was a reference to Tom Scott's video about why do YouTubers clap at the beginning of their video. Supposedly, letting the audience in on a little bit of the behind the scenes makes you seem more genuine and approachable.
I mean, we used to do it.
We did, but I used to cut it
We
out.
stopped recording different audio.
And then we got fucked because I fucked up the audio. And we didn't have your backup audio. But also I used to cut the clap sync out. So apparently I was doing this whole YouTube thing wrong. We're supposed to leave the clap in to make ourselves approachable. Hi, I'm Peter. I'm approachable.
Hello, fellow humans. I too am a human. Please treat me as such.
And he's also called Alex.
Oh yeah, that too. I forgot about my human name because
Yes.
I'm a human.
Yes, names, they're a social construct that we use.
Indeed. Helps to identify said human.
And we do a thing called the
Higgledy podcast.
Vader.
I feel like that's the third time in a row we've had Vader.
He's become the new Chester.
He has become the new Chester. Also, that's a little bit weirdly kind of serendipitous timing that James Earl Jones has just announced that he's retiring from Vader, but he's given Disney the rights to continue using AI to recreate his voice, and that is a not Disney AI, but a AI. That's a bit of a hard thing to say. An AI? That's more... Sounds wrong to say, but that would be grammar. Anyways, doesn't matter. Point is, it is an AI version of Darth Vader's voice. So that's weird. Weirdly timed.
Hopefully it doesn't sound like that one though, because it was unrecognizable to me for a long time.
Supposedly they used a mixture of James Earl Jones and an AI of James Earl Jones during Kenobi. So... I'd also obviously mix some Hayden in there sometimes as well. I think what they said they did, and this is a rumor, but they have released behind the scenes stuff now, so maybe it's in the behind the scenes stuff. I think what they did is sometimes they'd use James Earl Jones's takes, but sometimes they would want it to be the way that Hayden delivered the line. So they'd get Hayden to deliver the line and then like basically use the AI to recreate that exact performance, which is an interesting... But that was a rumor before the behind-the-scenes stuff got released, so I don't know if that's actually true or not.
I mean, if it is, and it sounds good. I mean, like, there wasn't any time in the show where I was like, ooh, that sounded really off, you know? Like, if it sounds fine, then, you know, go ahead. But also, if, you know, if it is too pressing, loads of other people have done decent Vader, you know, stuff, like, across all the games and whatever. Like, I think it's... You know, it's sad that he's retiring, but at the same time, I don't think it really matters too much because, as I said, they already have decent enough people to do it.
Well, I think as well, it was the same, because they definitely did use some AI technology on Kenobi, and it's the same technology they used to try and de-age Mark Hamill's voice for his appearance in Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian, and it sounded really stiff in The Mandalorian to me. But in Book of Boba Fett, it sounded a lot better, but still sometimes a bit stiff. But I think the advantage you have with Darth Vader is the voice is already heavily modulated, so it hides a lot of that stiffness because it already sounds modulated, then we're used to that. Also, real quick on that subject as well, I like how we're skipping to like the second to last news story in our topics. But hi, this is the podcast, by the way. We're talking about stuff already. We've got started pretty quickly. Look at us.
Yeah.
But
now we're ruining it by talking about starting it quickly.
But some people were being a little bit negative about it and saying like, it's really fucked up that, you know, Disney will continue to use James Earl Jones's voice through an AI rather than casting an actual actor and stuff. And I was like, look, a lot of this AI tech is creepy. A lot of it is, and a lot of it is putting people out of work, and I do acknowledge that. I mean, just recently, Corridor Crew put out a video about using AI to create artwork, and at the very end, they put like a 20-second disclaimer on it saying like, hey, just so you know, though, there are some like moral things with AI where it's like, maybe we shouldn't be using AI to create art because like it's actually stealing artists' work and just remixing it. Look, I love Corridor Crew. I sometimes think when they're talking about all this new tech, like they did it with NFTs as well, I feel like with as big a following as they have, they should maybe spend more time talking about the negative side of things and less of just the look how cool this is, because it is cool. It's also scary, and it is literally stealing other artists' artwork and remixing it. So it is incredibly problematic, and a lot of artists are pissed off about that technology, rightfully so. I think this particular case is a little bit of an unusual one where, yes, there are people who can do very good Darth Vader impressions, but James Earl Jones is the voice of Darth Vader, and he said, you can use AI to recreate that performance, which is already heavily modulated. Not any other James Earl Jones voice. They can't use the AI to recreate Scar's voice from Lion King or anything. It is the Darth Vader voice, and him and his family are going to continue being paid for that work. So essentially, he's putting money into his children and his grandchildren's pockets by saying, hey, this incredibly famous performance that I've done, yeah, you can continue to use it if you want. And I'm like, that is different to me than like deep faking a dead person back to life or something like that, which has always felt a bit creepy to me. And Star Wars has done that, and it's felt a bit creepy to me to do that. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a different case personally, but yeah.
I think it's a difficult one, because on the one hand, as you said, it can feel creepy, and also it sucks for people that don't, I guess, give commission, which is largely what it's about, right? Because it's, like if a bunch of artists came together and they just said, okay, here's a selection of our works that you can use to remix to create new art, and they got paid for that, then I don't think there is really an ethical problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if they don't do that, then obviously that sucks. And also, there's something just like wrong with it. Like I like whenever we see it or see about AI or something, I guess it's the uncanny valley type effect,
Mm-hmm.
Like it just doesn't feel right to me, regardless of whether it, looks good or bad or whatever. There is always that thing in the back of my mind where it's like, kind of wish they weren't using this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I think the thing is, there was when this AI hit the market, and I even played around with it a little bit just out of curiosity. The AI I briefly used is called Midjourney. It's got a Discord server. You can hop in there for free, and I think it's like 15 artworks that you can generate for free or something. And then you have to pay if you want more. And it's cool. Like from a just purely like, I'm not an artist. I can't create art because I fucking suck at drawing, and I haven't put the years and years and years into it, and I don't always have the budget to commission artists. It was cool to be like, ooh, I'm going to type in these prompts and say, ooh, that's pretty cool. Do you know what's fucking cooler, though? Having commissioned lots of artists before, is commissioning artists and working with an artist, and you give them your ideas, you give them your inspiration, and then they come back to you with something. They go, how's this? And then you maybe have a couple of notes, tweak things this way or that way, and they try something out themselves, like, cool, this isn't what you put in your like spec to me, but I had this idea for this and I ran with it. Do you like it? That is so fucking cool to actually work with an artist, and it's so much cooler than seeing an AI go, ooh, these 5 words that you've put in, I've generated this. So like, again, commissioning artists is expensive, and you also see quite a lot of the time on the internet people not understanding why it's so expensive. It's because it's fucking hard. If it wasn't hard, you'd just learn to do it yourself. Like, to me, I've commissioned, I've got some artist friends, I've commissioned D&D art for as cheap as $70 before, and that is cheap for a character, in my opinion. Like, I've commissioned for less actually before as well. Like, one person said something like, I want to say it was like 150 for an entire party, which is insanely cheap. It was just headshots, but like, and quite often I have argued with artists. I'm like, I'm gonna pay you more than you're requesting, because yes, we're mates, but also, yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it is expensive, but it's rightfully so expensive. But like, I do get the allure of the AI stuff, but as you say, it's like, it's uncanny and not always great. So
yeah, and also I think it's I think one of the largest problems I have is kind of what you said, is that it is taking people's jobs, basically. But I don't necessarily think that's a new thing, and I think it's fine as long as there's still someone that is assigned to be working on the AI. I guess, like, the with the voice thing, for
Mm.
example, like it's not like they were just like, okay, AI, do this, and then the AI just does it.
Sure.
They still had to, like, program it and make sure it was like layered properly and whatever, and like there was still someone doing that job, and that is nothing new.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like going from people working with practical effects to then movies switching over mainly to, like, you know computerized special effects and everything. Well, if they're just working on computers, the people that did practical effects are now technically out of that job. It's not
It's not
like
wholly
broad, but
dissimilar. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think the major difference to me, and it's come back to like this uncanny thing that we were saying, is that an AI creating something, it's not a creative process. The AI isn't creating something. The AI is generating something, which is different. There is, when you work with an artist, whatever field that is in, it is a creative process. There is, even in something pretty soulless like a corporate advert or whatever, there is still some heart put into those. There is still I don't know if you've seen, there's a really fucking, I meant to send it to you actually, it's a really fucking weird One Punch Man mobile game advert that's been trending on the internet recently, and it's really fucking cringy and awful, but I kind of feel like the people involved must have been on some level self-aware that this was fucking awful, and I feel like that gives it a little bit of like quality in a weird sort of way. So like,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think what is scary is there is this idea, and AI is getting better and better and better. Like, there is no doubt about it. As much as a lot of the artwork doesn't look great, again, in this Corridor Digital video they did, that it can't generate hands very well. Multiple times the hands have like 7 fingers and they're all like bent out of shape and whatever, because the AI just doesn't do it good. Eyes are also a bit weird quite often. But like, it is getting better. It's so much better than it was, a couple of months ago even. But I think what's scary is that in a generation of entertainment creation where there seems to be a prioritization on content rather than art, I think the idea of being able to generate content very cheaply with AI is scary. I mean, look, take for example, not trying to call them out here, a show like Rick and Morty is not fantastically animated. It doesn't look awful, but like, there's no, the art style, the animation is nothing to write home about, is it? You could theoretically,
No, but
it's part of its charm.
that's like, yeah, exactly. I mean, especially knowing like where it came from, seeing the original sort of cartoon that's kind of spawned the series. Like, yeah, it kept some of that, but also got better as time went on. But as you said, it's part of its charm.
But you could theoretically see in a couple of years' time someone using an AI to generate a very similar art style and animate an entire show with that, but it wouldn't have the charm because it's soulless. And unfortunately, I look at some studios, for instance, Warner Brothers with HBO Max, and what show was it that was recently revealed that it's being a tax break? Final Space? Final Space is being deleted. Like, HBO are just going to remove it from their platform entirely because it's a tax break. It's similar to the Batgirl situation, where if they just eradicate it from existence, they will get basically a tax break. And you think, with a company doing that to its content because it doesn't care, it's just about the money, I could totally see HBO in a couple of years using an AI to animate an entire show, and that's terrifying and also bleak. Like, it's just depressing to think about. So
I mean, it is because of just, what it, as you said, what it is basically. But at the same time, I it would be interesting to see, like, if they just kind of said, if they came out and they were like, this is an experiment, we're not going to do this like ever again, this is just purely to see if we let an AI generate an entire show.
Yeah, I
how
mean,
would it turn out?
it's
That
like
would
the
be interesting.
the Batman script written by an AI sort
Oh
of
my
thing.
god, it's so good.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't object if what they decided to do was I don't think Warner Brothers owns Adult Swim. I can't remember who owns Adult Swim, but like imagine, you know, Adult Swim has its very weird content that comes on at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Like Too Many Cooks is a prime example of that, where if you don't know Too Many Cooks, you should watch it. It's amazing. But the context of that as well is that it's just a random one thing. It's not a show, it's not a movie, it's like a 10-minute video that they aired at like 3 o'clock in the morning between two other shows. So if you were a stoner up at 3 o'clock in the morning when that originally aired, imagine the trip you went through watching that. Like, you would be so fucking confused, and that's amazing. So if they wanted to do something like that where they air it at 3 o'clock in the morning on Adult Swim, and it's like and literally I think the best way to do it would be to do like an AI animation of an AI script, so there's no human involved whatsoever, other than like the prompts. Yeah. That could be vaguely interesting as just like a dumb little thing. Like, again, an AI trying to animate the AI script of Batman. Yeah, that would be vaguely interesting, I suppose. But yeah, I unfortunately I don't see that being the way that corporate suits try and utilize this technology. So.
That video just gets me. I watch it from time to time. Just the coupon for new parents, but it's expired.
Yeah. I mean, also, to be fair, though, sometimes I look at things like that, and that one's a prime example where I'm like, I almost don't believe that this is fully written by an AI. It's a little bit too funny that I feel like a human, maybe like most of it's written by an AI, but then a human went in and added things like the coupon for new parents, but it's expired thing. Because, like, I just don't know how an AI got that. Like, it's just so weird, but yeah, I don't know. Either way, it's a scary new world, and it has been for like many decades. So, yeah.
Singularity is coming.
Or a nuclear war. Apparently, Putin's threatening that again.
I mean, he can threaten it all he wants, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Me neither. But he's him. Hey, if we survive, maybe we can be a post-apocalyptic podcast. Just sitting in an irradiated wasteland with our microphones. No internet to upload it to, but to be fair, our viewer count probably wouldn't be that much lower, so.
True.
Alright, do you want to talk about
Tekken? Yes. Let me just go through. Where are we?
We missed last week, didn't we? So we've got a decent amount of stuff. That's not too much to talk about, actually, but yeah. Tekken 8 trailer.
Yeah. So on the podcast that we had the issues with that never got to see the day, I think it was during that podcast I talked about Tekken Bloodlines, the latest anime from Tekken.
Sounds familiar, yeah. You've definitely talked about it on a podcast, I just don't remember if it's one that's seen the light of day.
Yeah. So Tekken Bloodlines, I don't really have much of a history with Tekken. Like, the only Tekken game I've really played was one of them on the PSP when I was younger, and I spent a lot of time playing that, thoroughly enjoyed it, and since then I kind of grown more into like Mortal Kombat and Injustice and stuff like that. I generally am a fan of fighting games, like less so Street Fighter and things that have like really awkward like representation of the buttons that you need to press to do combos. Like, instead of just giving you, like left, right, A, B, whatever, they give you all these directional stuff that means absolutely nothing to me. And Tekken was one of those games where I was like, okay, this isn't too difficult, but also it's a lot slower than the ones that I'm used to. But I really like the characters and like the aesthetic of it. And so Tekken Bloodlines basically gave me all of that without actually having to like play the game. but it did kind of make me want to play the game, and I was like, should I like get Tekken 7 or like an earlier one and just give it a try or whatever? And then this trailer dropped for Tekken 8, and I was like, oh, this is a very nice surprise. So it looks good from my perspective, which isn't really saying much because I haven't really looked at any of the other Tekken games since the PSP version. But now that I've seen Tekken Bloodlines, I know the two characters in the trailer. Um, um, and yeah, I think it looks cool, and I would definitely like to give this one a try. I don't know if I'm gonna like it. I feel like I've grown too accustomed to the Mortal Kombat style fighting games, like a lot quicker, and I think the like combos are just easier to achieve.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely interested, and also now that I know a bit more about the story and a bit more about the characters, I might be like fine with just not really caring about the gameplay and just going through the story.
Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about Tekken other than I played one game once with my friend, and he kept on beating me, but he also kept on smoking weed while we were playing, and so progressively I got better and better and better, by which I mean he progressively got more and more stoned. I vaguely like, I'm not sure how I like it in practice, but I like the concept of it being like a 3D fighter rather than a 2D fighter, because it's like you can kind of move around in 3D space, but the camera's kind of always locked in the same position, sort of thing. At least
Yeah,
in
it's
the
weird
Tekken
to
game
me.
that I played.
Oh, I should also say that I have played a couple of the Soul Calibur games as well, which I think are like kind of tied in with Tekken.
I
I
didn't know
know
that, but
that
fair enough.
both Tekken and Soul Calibur have Yoshimitsu as a character, and they both change their like outfits every single game, and it's basically the same really strange character. I did watch a YouTube video on him the other day because I found it interesting. So I think they're tied in that aspect, but like nothing else.
Fair enough.
And so like Soul Calibur has like the same 3D style
Mm.
fighting, and I didn't mind it, but also I don't really see the point of it. It's more for like dodging, I guess. Like instead of just holding a button to dodge and whatever, like if someone throws a move, you can just step
Well,
towards the camera or back.
because how I remember it is that the camera is basically always locked at the same perspective anyway, so it's, I always just took it as it was trying to be more cinematic, because like in a fight, characters move around a lot, but in Mortal Kombat or something, you're just kind of like shuffling left and right on the screen. So I always just took it as that, but I don't think it adds much mechanically speaking. You compare that to something like Jedi Academy, which, you know, if you play deathmatch duels and that, the camera's locked at the same distance behind you, basically, if you're playing in third person, but you fully move around in a 3D space. It's a very different game to something like Mortal Kombat. And as your very limited experience with that goes, there's a lot of people jumping around and bouncing off walls and stuff. So,
Yeah. I
um,
mean, I think there is something from Injustice that I really like, which is the I'm I don't think Mortal Kombat has it. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, but in Injustice they have like the like map transitions.
mm-hmm.
Um and in DC Universe versus Mortal Kombat. Um so like if you go to the edge of the map and you do like a super move or
You can like
something,
throw someone through a wall
sometimes
onto the streets of Gotham or whatever.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And in the DC versus MK game, you could like throw them off a platform and you'll just be fooling, and there'll be like an active time event where you're like both having to, you know, spam buttons to try and get the upper hand, and then whoever comes out on top, you know, you're like slamming to the ground, and the person that lost will take like bonus damage or something like that. You know, I think that makes it like more cinematic, and also just adds a like little extra sort of mechanical thing into it that makes it just slightly more interesting than, as you said, shuffling backwards and forwards.
Yeah, I can't remember whether Mortal Kombat's more recent editions did have that, and you would know more than me because the last Mortal Kombat I played was 9. But they did introduce like map interactability where you could like grab things off the map and use them in combat, didn't they? Which I think Injustice
Yes,
also
yeah.
has, if memory serves.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I personally feel like Injustice 2 is my gold standard of fighting games. I know a lot of people, well, actually, I think a lot of people did like it. I think it was MK11 that a lot of fans were iffy on, but Injustice 2 is definitely my gold standard because not only did they have all of that basically, but they also had like the best character customization in a fighting game I've ever seen.
I haven't played it, but I own it. I'm pretty sure I bought it during like a Steam sale ages ago, but I don't think I've gotten around to playing it. But I liked the look of the customization. At the same time, I fucking hate some of the actual customization options. Some like looks for like Batman or the Flash that I've seen from that game are fucking trash tier costume designs.
Oh
But
yeah,
the fact
some
that
of
you
them are
can,
terrible.
but the fact that you can choose them and they're not the default, whatever. Who cares at that point? But like, yeah,
Yeah.
there are some like, it makes the
There,
Blue Beetle costume from Smallville that I sent you earlier look amazing.
there are some real lows in Injustice 2.
Hmm.
But like
And
there are
I will
some
say I
also
don't.
just like
Sorry, go ahead.
there are also just some real highs. Like some of the costumes look amazing. Like I remember playing it and it actually made me want to do stuff to actually unlock gear because I was like, oh man, that looks so fucking good. I need my character to look like this.
The one thing I will say is I don't love the default Batman costume in either Injustice game. It's like one of my least favorite Batman costumes, but whatever.
Yeah, I am also not particularly fond of them. But also I never really played Batman in either of them just because I
So
don't think
cringe.
he was anywhere near one of the most fun characters.
It's because he doesn't have enough prep time. That's why.
But yeah, another thing that I really loved about the customization in Injustice 2 was they introduced characters like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Hmm.
who, can I just say, I cooled. And I got so much shit for this on a YouTube comment. But like before there was any like announcement or anything, people always clamor to these games and say like, "Oh, I think they're gonna add this character as a DLC because blah blah blah." And at the time, DC had just done a crossover with Batman and the TMNT,
This is where my
and
parents died, Raphael.
yeah,
It's my favorite out of context panel of any comic ever.
yeah, it's pretty good. And yeah, and I was like, I'm pretty sure they're gonna include the TMNT in the next DLC. And everyone was like, why would they do that? How would they even do that? There's four of them. Like, what, they're gonna just have a whole pack just dedicated to them? Like giving me all this shit. And I was like, well, they could just have them as one character, you know?
Different
Like,
costume designs, different animations for them, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what they fucking did. They made it so that if you just changed their weapon, it changes the turtle you're using and it changes their moveset. And I fucking called it. Fucking called it. And I'm still proud of myself to this day for that call. But like again, that's exactly what I'm saying. The fact that they incorporated something like that where it can just change a character solely depending on the weapon and everything,
Mm.
and then still even let you like change the way each of those turtles look. I just thought that was amazing, and I was so disappointed when I learned that they weren't carrying that through to MK11. Like, I still think that's one of the biggest letdowns to date.
So here's an interesting, just random question. Who do you feel like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is closer to now, DC or Marvel? Because they've appeared in a Batman comic, they've appeared in a DC video game, but they are basically Daredevil spin-offs.
Well, I mean, DC because most comic book characters, whether they're Marvel or DC, are rip-offs off of something from the other side.
Yeah, but
so...
this isn't just a rip-off. This is canonically in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics, not approved by Marvel, to be clear, but they like confirmed that the toxic waste that makes the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the same waste that spills into Matt's eyes and makes him blind when he saves the guy on the road.
Really?
Yeah, and then Stick is Daredevil's mentor, and God, what is his name? The rat in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The rat.
I can't remember his name. I'm blanking. What's his name?
Master Splinter.
Splinter. Stick and Splinter. Like it's yeah.
I mean, yeah. I guess, but I mean, also Marvel and DC have done crossover comics before,
Yeah,
so you know.
Yeah. Either
Damn,
way,
I wish...
what I'm saying is that I want the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to show up in Daredevil Born Again.
Wish I had my TMNT shirt on right now. I didn't know we were going to be talking about it.
But yeah. So anyways, last thing I'll say is, as I say, I've played one Tekken game. I remember the tiger with the boxing shorts. The other thing I know about Tekken is the guy chucking someone off of a cliff and then smiling into the camera.
They do that a lot in Tekken, I've realized.
What, the chucking off the cliff?
Yeah, at least 3 people I know have done it in Tekken.
I assume it's because it became such like infamous scene that they're just like constantly calling back to it, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure you even see 3 of them do it in Tekken Bloodlines.
It might be.
It's like...
yeah. I mean, one of them, I'm
like...
pretty sure the first time it happens is at the end of the first game or something. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the grandfather throws the son off of the cliff. And then when the son comes back, he throws the grandfather off of the cliff. And then the grandson throws one of the 2 off the cliff. So, yeah, they like cliffs in that game.
Random side note, but talking about cliffs and also going back to James Earl Jones, I saw a TikTok recently in Lion King when Scar throws Mufasa off the cliff. He says, "Long live the king," and then Mufasa gets trampled. Do you know what animal in that I guess what's the word for it, like biosphere or whatever, that ecosystem feeds off of lions?
I don't know, a bird of some kind?
Probably vultures, but the big one is other lions.
Oh.
Lions tend to eat their own dead, and there is a scene later on in the film where Scar is talking to the hyenas and he's like doing a song and he picks up a skull, and then the TikTok guy went, "What does a lion skull look like?" And he's holding a lion skull, so there's a good chance the Scar went and ate Mufasa's. I can't remember how to pronounce it. I haven't seen Lion King in so long. Mufasa, I think.
I think it's Mufasa. Yeah.
The theory is that Scar kills Mufasa and then eats his body and then plays around with his bones.
I'm not sure which part of that sounds the worst. eating your brother or playing with his bones.
Yeah. Because he kind of does like a Hamlet thing where he like lifts up the skull and talks to it, and it's a lion skull that he lifts up. So
shit.
Yeah.
Maybe he got his hyena goons to eat it still. Do hyenas eat other things? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a zoologist.
Neither am I, but I like that theory just because it's the fun thing with like a lot of classic Disney movies is there's a lot of fucked up shit that they just sneaked in there, so it totally passes that logic as well of just being like a fucked up thing that a Disney animator would be like, wouldn't it be funny if Scar's holding a lion skull and all the things that implicates? So
well, I mean, most of them are Brothers Grimm tales anyway, and they were fucked up.
Yeah, Lion King isn't a Brothers Grimm. Lion King is Hamlet, but yeah.
Well, Shakespeare was also very fucked up. So.
True. Also, I remember telling one of my friends once after studying, I was studying film at college, and I had the lesson on. There are various theories on how many stories there are in the world, and it really boils down to how much of a pedant you want to be. But if you want to be fairly pedantic, most people say like 6 or 7 core narratives in the world, and like most stories that we watch or listen or read are variations on those narratives. And then there's one theorist who's like, there's only one narrative in the world, and it's conflict. Which is like, okay, you're being super pedantic at that point, but sure. But anyways, the point is that you've seen Hamlet like 100 times. It's just with small details changed. The original 4 movie is Hamlet, but not. So, anyways. And anyway, yeah, I told my friend that, and they went, "No, you're wrong. Lion King and 4 aren't Hamlet." And I'm like, yeah, they are. Here are all the beat for beats that they share. They're the same story. Doesn't make them worse.
Yeah.
They're both great. Well, Lion King's a great film. 4's a decent film, and Hamlet's a pretty great play. But yeah, anyways. Rise of the Ronin. Do we want to talk about that? It's just below Tekken. You posted it.
Yeah. I did watch it. Couldn't remember the name. I just think it looks very interesting. It looks like a mixture between Ghost of
Tsushima.
Let me retry that. Ghost of Tsushima. And Sekiro. That's the name, right? But also with like magic and shit. Wait, is this the one with magic and shit?
Yeah,
or
it
is
has
this
magic in it. There's like a scene towards the end of the trailer where he like leaps up into the air and then like darts forward.
Yeah. I'm just a sucker for anything to do with like samurai and Ronin and shit. So it just looks very interesting to me. I will say it doesn't like appearance wise look the best. In fact, I don't think it looks great at all. It kind of reminds me of like an Assassin's Creed game from years ago.
I was gonna say it kind of like visually is a bit like Last Generation, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, it may very well have started out that way.
And it may well look better by the time it releases next year because it's a year away, sort of thing.
Yeah, and you know, once it's actually being, you know, even though it probably is played on a PS5, you know, it's gone, you know, compressed on YouTube and whatever else, and you know, as you said, it might not have been rendered properly, and it might get better once it's released. But
that one YouTuber did say about the GTA 6 leaks that, as you should all know, with game design, the visuals are the first thing that are completed. We're not going to talk much about the GTA 6 leak because it just sucks for everyone, but Jesus Christ, that guy got memed on because don't talk out of your ass on the internet, people will call you out on it. Anyways.
But yeah, I think it looks interesting.
It's definitely like an interesting time period to explore in a video game. I hadn't really thought about that. Like, we seem to be getting a decent slew of like Japanese, like historical Japanese inspired video games. Obviously, we recently had Ghost of Tsushima. We're getting Assassin's Creed Red. There is another one that I can't remember the name of at the moment, and then there's this.
It's Jade, something else.
Oh, I wasn't talking about the other Assassin's Creeds.
Oh, right.
There's another game that kind of looks like a similar sort of gameplay loop and is set in ancient Japan that was revealed fairly recently, but I can't remember what it's called. But a lot of them are set further back in time. Rise of the Ronin seems to be set during this kind of influx of it's America coming over to Japan and basically fucking up that country. They learned from the best, didn't they, at that? That was a joke. I'm not proud of our colonization history. Anyways.
You better be careful what you say because, you know, even though Rishi Sunak isn't our prime minister, he's probably still got his hooks in.
I thought didn't he retire from her party because he didn't want to be involved?
Well, it might
who,
have, but a
who
politician's always a politician.
also, Liz Truss might not last very long.
And also,
there's a
he
theory she
did
killed the
like,
queen.
yeah,
she
I
she
heard
she
about
met she
that.
met the queen 2 days later. The queen passed away. I mean, I don't blame her. Like, if I was 90 something and I had to meet Liz Truss, I might also, cross over to the other side. But
Especially directly after having Bojo serve as prime minister.
yeah,
Like the shock of going from him to her. Oh,
yeah.
she's just
Anyways,
like, I'm just
we're
well.
trying not to be political in this podcast, but we can't help it because Jesus Christ. Anyways, yeah, you're right. I could end up in re-education camp, but I think that's an interesting time period to explore of like just a massive change to the country and the culture. I think the other thing that's potentially interesting with that is one of my favorite underlying story elements of Ghost of Tsushima is that you are playing a samurai in that game, and it's before ninjas or shinobi, whatever you want to call them, had really arisen in Japan's history. So people didn't know about that sort of thing. You kind of more or less, spoilers alert, you kind of more or less become the first ninja, or like at least the first known ninja in that game. And there's this interesting play on like the world is changing, the ways of honor and being a samurai aren't working anymore, and the only way to defeat our enemies is to make these sacrifices, make these compromises. And in the game, you can kind of decide how much you want to play as a samurai and how much you want to play as a ninja as the game goes on, and then there's even an element of that to the final choice that you make in the game as to whether you're honorable or not. And I really, really like that. And I think the idea of now introducing Western influences coming into Japan and playing a Ronin who is a samurai without a master, I think there's a potential really kind of golden narrative to tell there. The only thing I will say is I've never played a single Team Ninja game, so I have no idea what the kind of writing skills are. So I have no idea whether they're going to be able to live up to that potential, basically. That's not to say that they won't, I just don't know.
I do know the name Team Ninja.
They
but I
did
cannot
the Dead
think
or
of
Alive games.
what the ones where the women had like huge bazoinkies.
Okay, yes, those games. They also did the Ninja Gaiden games.
Oh. I mean, I know Ninja Gaiden is beloved. Dead or Alive, I don't know, never really paid much attention to them. I just know them because I think my dad used to play them. um,
Wait a
but
second. Hold on. Wait a fucking second. Hold the fucking phone, Alex.
I'm holding.
Oh my god, yes. Do you know what else they made?
Oh,
They
God,
made
this doesn't sound
Stranger of
good.
Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, which if you're not sure which Final Fantasy game that is, it's the
I know which
bullshit
one it is.
plays
Yeah.
Limp Bizkit game.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill chaos. Never mind.
Chaos is on my doorstep.
I'm so hyped for Rise of the Ronin now.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Chaos. I actually want to play that game now. Like, just to see how bad it really is. Apparently it wasn't like god awful, which was very surprising to me.
Yeah, from what I've heard, like the game is not awful. It's just the writing is fucking awkward, but it's also like it's almost self-aware of it. Like I'm not sure if it is, but like it's tolerable enough that you can kind of have fun with the bad writing rather than it being like an off-putting thing. Have you seen the scene where the three main characters meet each other for the first time? It's so good, but also so bad.
Yeah, I do know, like, because I didn't think I was ever going to play it. Like, with most Final Fantasy games, I probably won't ever go back and play them. Like, at least maybe I'll try, one or two of them, but I'm not that interested. I mean, I'm currently addicted to Final Fantasy 14, as my caption suggests. Um, but that is the only Final Fantasy game I've ever played, and I don't really care about the others. But I do know that Stranger Paradise has like a big twist or something that relates to one of the like earlier games in the franchise, and like a lot of older players really loved that and thought it was like really cool.
I'm pretty sure it's
And I
something
did
to do with
try.
who Chaos is.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah. Um, and like I kind of looked into it a bit because I was just curious as to why people are going like crazy over it, and it seems so confusing to me. Like it just seems so like I feel like it's one of those types of franchises where you really have had to have played it from like the beginning to have an appreciation of the franchise, because
on
I
a
just
on a scale of Rings of Power, convoluted, which is not a diss at Rings of Power, it's a lot of Tolkien lore. Uh, Rings of Power convoluted to Kingdom Hearts convoluted. Where would you put this level of convolution?
Kingdom Hearts convoluted.
Okay.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, I feel like they're very similar, to be fair. Um,
except Final Fantasy, I think is a weird one where they do have a lot of spin-off games and spin-off animations and whatever, but most of the games are numbered, so most of the roughly how many games. There's like a couple of spin-offs. Kingdom Hearts, we're on 3, but I'm pretty sure there's like 8 other games between
yeah.
1, 2, and 3, and they're all part of the main storyline. You don't understand 3 if you haven't played those other spin-offs. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, Final Fantasy, you can, from my understanding, you don't have to have played 6 to play 7, for instance. You might appreciate it
Well,
more,
that's the
but like,
thing. Like I don't understand, because some of them are like obviously most of the like first few of the games are sort of like the 8-bit type whatever, or 16-bit whatever. But then I feel like some of the later games are also that, but some games in between are 3D, and also like the characters all change and everything between the games. And like yeah, I'm not sure, maybe it is more simple than I think it is, but I don't even know if I can be bothered to try and learn like what games I need to play in what order. It's just no, I'm fine just playing 14. It's cool with
I mean,
me.
I think the most convoluted franchise that I've ever played is the Devil May Cry franchise, which I'd say is like it's up there, but it's nowhere near the Kingdom Hearts level of convoluted.
I thought there was only like the 4 games, right?
So there's
5.
technically
No, 6.
it's technically 6, but DMC Devil May Cry is not related to the other 5, so you can chuck that one in the bin. But what is confusing is that the canonical release, like the canonical order of the Devil May Cry games, goes Devil May Cry 3, Devil May Cry 1, Devil May Cry 2. No, Devil May Cry 4, Devil May Cry 2, Devil May Cry 5. But Devil May Cry 2 is kind of reviled by most of the audience and also most of the writers. So 5 and 4 kind of just, well, 4 set before it, but 5 doesn't really acknowledge 2's existence in any way, shape, or form. So there's
Is
that.
2 the one where he screams
No, that's 1.
about being the one to follow? So like,
That's
oh
1.
right, okay.
Uh, so there's that whole thing, and then there's also like just like the mechanics of it. So there's things like, do you know who he's shouting that about in Devil May Cry 1? The I was supposed to be the one to fill your dark soul with light.
It's like the clone of his mother or
It's the
something,
clone of his
isn't it?
mother. Okay, so you know that. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it's a whole thing, but like it's not that bad. But like trying to explain it to someone who has no idea about the franchise, it's a little bit tough. And you're like, okay, so Rebellion is Sparda's sword, but it's not Sparda's sword because Sparda's sword is a different sword, but Rebellion was also Sparda's sword, and also so is Yamato, but that's also a different sword. But there is a sword called Sparda's sword, which is different. Anyways, Rebellion then changes into I can't remember what it's called in Devil May Cry 5, but it gets transformed in Devil May Cry 5. So there's that whole situation as well. Anyways, going on to Nero. So Nero is, he has a devil arm, but he's not a devil himself. But actually he is a devil himself because he's Virgil's son. Spoilers for Devil May Cry 5. If you didn't... Actually, no, it's revealed in Devil May Cry 4 DLC anyways, but still, if you didn't know, it's fucking obvious that he's Virgil's son. But yeah, it's a whole thing.
So Nero wasn't new for 5 then. He was
he's in
4
4.
as well.
He's 4. You play as Dante and Nero. That's like half and half.
Oh right, okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
kind
a
of
substantially
similar to
better
5.
character in 5. Like he's an actual character in 5. But yeah. To the point
like
that
to play through those games.
I almost prefer Nero in 5 to Dante in 5, which is a bit sacrilegious, but I really vibed with Nero and his story in 5. So
Yeah, I would like to go through and play the games. I did try 5 for a little while, but I just kind of, I don't know. It was one of those games where I didn't dislike it, but also I just stopped playing one day and I just never really thought about picking it back up again.
Gotcha. I will say 5 is the best gameplay by quite a long way. Like going back to Devil May Cry 3 is probably, and Devil May Cry 1 is a bit of an oof because they've aged quite a bit. But the fun still, like they've got good stories. I would, if you do ever go back and play them, just skip 2. It's not relevant to the story of 5 whatsoever, and it's not a good game. So
Right. And skip DMC as well, right?
DMC Devil May Cry is a bad Devil May Cry game, but a good game. So if you like the gameplay of Devil May Cry, you might enjoy DMC Devil May Cry, but it's not Devil May Cry. It's like, it's a reboot, but it fucks up so much in the reboot. Like Dante doesn't feel like Dante, Virgil doesn't feel like Virgil. It's just like, it's weird. And 5 is much better in part because they use a lot of the gameplay from DMC Devil May Cry, but they've set it in the actual Devil May Cry universe with the original characters, so it's just better in that way. But like the gameplay of DMC Devil May Cry, for instance, is significantly better than Devil May Cry 4, which was the Devil May Cry game before that. So yeah.
What I'm about to say is probably also as sacrilegious as you saying that
I like
you
Nero.
almost preferred Nero to Dante, but
Nero revs up his sword, man. It's so fucking dumb but cool. He like in one of the cutscenes, he just slams his sword into the ground and just goes vroom, vroom, and I'm just like, yeah. So dumb.
that is pretty cool. Everyone should have swords they can rev up.
I mean, it is a motorbike handle, and it does like ignite flames on the sword, so it does have function. It's not just him just doing it, but like it's still just fucking stupid.
I actually prefer DMC Dante's look to normal Dante. I think he just looked really, really cool. I think that's probably why I gravitated towards Nero as well, because I kind of got DMC vibes from the way he was like dressing and stuff.
Nero in Devil May Cry 5, I'm pretty sure they like try to bring his look closer to DMC's Dante. I'm pretty sure of that because it's very like the coat is very, very similar. But yeah, no, I think look, Dante is very of a time period in terms of his design. And I kind of like the fact that in Devil May Cry 5, he's just like, he's the wacky drunken uncle at that point, because he's basically like an emo kid from the early 2000s, and then it's 2020, and he's still an emo kid from the early 2000s, but he's 20 years older, and I kind of just like that they just stuck with that aesthetic, where it's just like, he's just not good. Like, but at the same time, Dante in Devil May Cry 3 is fucking awesome. Like, Have you seen the opening cutscene to Devil May Cry 3?
No.
I should send you. There's a streamer called, I think her name is Louisiana off the top of my head. It's her handle on Twitch. She has an amazing reaction to it when she played it for the first time because it's just the most batshit insane intro to a video game you've ever seen.
Is it something to do with pizza?
It is something to do with pizza.
Okay, I might have seen it, but I don't remember anything but the pizza, which isn't entirely unsurprising to me.
Yeah, it starts with him eating a pizza as he walks out of a shower and he's shirtless, and then it just wildly escalates from there.
Yeah, you'll have to send it to me. See if I can
Do you want it raw, or do you want someone freaking out to it at the same time? Because it is funny to watch it, but you might prefer it. Do you want to be given the meat raw, as a certain character would say, or?
No, I'll have the reaction to it as well.
Cool. But yeah. Anyways, that's our talk about Rise of Ronin, which turned into Devil May Cry. We're very good at staying on topic here.
Oh yes.
We're almost like that other podcast. There's a podcast called Off Topic that I watch. Warhaven?
Yes. I am curious about this game. It reminds me of so Warhaven looks to be like a medieval sort of multiplayer third person fighting game. I don't really know how to describe it, but again with magic. I guess what was that game called? The one released by the Chivalry people. Was it Mirage or something?
No idea.
Or I can't remember, but the people from Chivalry made a very similar game, but there was magic and stuff in it as well. And this game seems to be a third person crossover between those two almost.
Yeah, Mirage Arkham Warfare. I'd never heard of this.
Yeah, I played it in beta, I think, and it was fun for a little bit, but after a while I kind of realized it was really not good at all.
It doesn't surprise me that you say that or that I've never heard of it. The game launched on Windows PC in May 2017, but was shut down 1 year later.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at that either. But yeah, I think that's a fun concept, and as I said, I liked the idea of Mirage, and it was fun for a bit, but there really just wasn't anything to keep it going. And I think something that makes Chivalry and Mordhau very popular is almost the simplicity of it. Literally, if you just want a game where you can go and yeah, but if you just want a game where you can just whip out a sword or a hammer or something and just go and fuck people up, it's easy enough to do that. And even if you're not exactly skilled at the game, it's when you do get a few hits in and you get a kill, it still is gratifying. And also, seeing as there aren't really many games out there where you can just do that, it's a very niche concept.
Mm-hmm.
And when you bring in magic, I feel like it kills the magic a little bit, because
I like what you did there.
because now you're not just jumping into a game and just wildly swinging and hoping to chop someone's head off. You're shooting stuff and having to avoid all these different spell effects and flying around, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Paladins or Overwatch, anything like that, but just not refined. It just seemed like they were trying to do too much. And I think it's partly because they didn't really think it through very well and want to create a different game. They wanted basically to make chivalry again, but just replace swords and hammers and bows with magic. And it just doesn't hit the same way. But the reason I'm interested in this new game Warhaven is because it seems to be specifically crafted as like a game on its own rather than like a rip-off with a few adjustments. Um and it also just looks like very fast-paced, and like it very much feels like you are in a battle. You know, there's like stuff going on all around you. Like the battles look to be big, and uh you know, like there are like boulders flying in the air, and you know, in the trailer it shows someone like I, I, I'm pretty sure it's not the actual gameplay, but you know, shows them like catching a boulder with magic or something. And it just seems just, as I said, more refined than what Mirage was trying to do.
I'd almost be curious. I didn't actually watch the trailer for this in the end. It slipped past me. But, like, I almost feel like that sort of game could work if, like, you had to unlock being a mage in a similar sort of way to, like, Battlefront. You unlock playing the hero characters in that. And
Yeah.
personally, for me, I don't know about you, but I never really liked playing the hero characters in Battlefront. They're not as fun
No.
to me, but like other people do like playing them, and you know I don't mind their existence. In I didn't play much of the newer two Battlefronts multiplayer because Battlefront, but I played the fuck out of the original Battlefronts multiplayer, and like you know it wasn't not cool to suddenly see Darth Vader across the battlefield. But I always preferred the more like you're playing an actual like rebel trooper or stormtrooper or whatever sort of vibe. Um, but it could almost be like, because what I don't think I would want is every average Joe to be able to catch a boulder out of midair. That could be a bit meh. But if there was like at any given time one player on the enemy team and your team who could do that, that could be fucking cool. But I mean, I'm always down for something that kind of has that chaotic battle vibe, because my favorite thing about Mordhau, and I'm sure I've said this on the podcast before, was my first time booting up. And I'm pretty sure I played it the night before we all played it together. I just like hopped on for a game or two, and I just hopped on like an actual siege level or whatever. And it felt like that scene from Battle of the Bastards where you're charging into battle and there's people on horses riding past you and there's soldiers on all sides of you and you're not sure which ones are your teammates and which ones are your enemies. One little detail I really like about Mordhau is that it's way, way, way easier to be on the blue team than it is way, way easier to be on the red team than it is to be on the blue team. Yeah, I guess it balances out. Anyways, point is the blood gets covered. People get covered in blood, so the blue team ends up looking quite red. So, like, it becomes harder and harder to distinguish your teammates. And, yeah, so, like, that whole vibe I really, really enjoyed. So, any game that kind of offers that sort of experience, I am down for. And magic in that could be fun, so.
But, like, I was just kind of skipping through again, and similarly to what you just said, I think it would be fine if there's maybe only, like, one on the team, but I also feel like it can get a bit frustrating. For example, like there was at least it looked in the trailer that there was like a mage, or you know, whatever they're going to be called in there, that just kind of like brings something down on top of a bunch of people, you know, via magic, that are just fighting with swords and everything. And I'm just thinking how I would feel as probably primarily like a hammer wielder, because I mean it's just my go-to in those types of games. You know, I'm in there, heat of battle, trying to take on a couple of people, you know, uh like with close combat weaponry, and then suddenly I just have like a mage from afar that I can't even see just like slam me with magic. Like I struggle to see how that would feel good.
Mm.
Um,
I guess it would have to be balanced in the same sort of way that games that have like siege weaponry is incredibly damaging, but it's also like super slow. Magic would have to be the same. If a player can do that constantly, it'd be fucking annoying. If it's like once every 5 minutes and you just happen to be unlucky, that's not too bad, sort of thing.
yeah, yeah. I think the way to get around that is by having like a mage or something with like a primary weapon. Like so all the characters have different like abilities
Mm.
depending on the class you're playing or whatever, and the mage has a primary weapon like a sword or whatever, so they can still go into combat, but also they have the abilities on cooldowns that do something different. But
Mm.
then the other classes would have to have something that evens it out, to make them balanced, and make sure that okay, the mage can just drop some magical shit on top of them, but also like a way to defend against that and kill them just as quickly.
Yeah.
You know, I, I, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I think I will follow it closely. Um, that being said, since I posted it, I haven't literally looked into it at all, so I'm not even sure when it's meant to be coming out or anything. But yeah, it's
I think the most
it.
important thing to me would be to make it so that a magic user is vulnerable when they're casting magic, and that magic takes a while to cast. It's kind of like, again, I'm super into the idea of running Cyberpunk at the moment, and I was talking to Cal about it, and he was like, "Oh, I've been reading up on how net running works in Cyberpunk," and he hasn't read through it in full, so this might be completely incorrect. But from what he was telling me, in Cyberpunk Red, a player who is skilled in something, skilled in net running, can net run in combat, and how that works is that they basically like chip into the net, and the physical body is still where the physical body is, but then they're in cyberspace, like hacking, basically. The idea being, let's say you're in a battle, let's say you, Samo, Tommy, and Callum are in a battle, you're fighting off some corpo scum, and Callum's like, I'm gonna chip in, and it's chipping in by Samurai starts playing, and then he's in the net, and his body's just like behind cover somewhere. His body is vulnerable, but also he's helping turn the tide of battle by hacking the corpos, is what it sounds like it would work. I'm like, that's a really cool dynamic, because now, yes, he's giving you guys advantages, but he is completely defenseless, so you need to protect him. That's a really interesting kind of gameplay mechanical loop sort of thing. Kind of makes me wish that CD Projekt Red would have released online for Cyberpunk 2077 like they said they were going to do, and I don't think they ever will.
They said they were going to have a completed game, but well,
But hey, they're having the comeback story, which I'm glad for. Already seen a couple of revisionist PC Gamer articles where they're like, actually, maybe Cyberpunk's not as bad as we've been saying for 2 years. I'm like, interesting. It's interesting. Anyways, Blade Runner. So, a live action sequel series to both Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, currently titled Blade Runner 2099, is officially moving forward at Amazon Prime Video. Silka Luisa will serve as showrunner, with Ridley Scott set to executive produce. No mention of Denis Villeneuve, which is a little bit sad, but it's fine. He said he was never going to do a Blade Runner sort of project again, which is fine, doesn't break my heart at all. I don't know how much of a fan you are of Denis Villeneuve.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
The director of Blade Runner 2049.
Oh.
And Dune.
Right.
And Sicario.
Okay.
And Prisoners.
None of which I've seen.
Okay.
Still none of which I've seen.
Alex, I'm saying this to you as a friend. I'm giving you a favor. I'm doing you a favor here. Denis Villeneuve is one of the best filmmakers working at the moment. You should, at the very least, watch something like, I reckon you'd like Prisoners. I think Prisoners is a very easy sell for you. Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Paul Dano. are the main three actors in that film. It's like a drama revolving around an investigation into a serial killer. So that's a strong recommendation. Sicario is like a crime drama to do with drug cartels. It's also pretty good. Arrival, it's a good film. I don't know how much of a vibe it will be for you. It's about aliens arriving and the scientists trying to talk to the aliens and learn their language. It's a good film, but it's quite a slow kind of methodical existential drama, I guess. Blade Runner 2049. I'm sure I've missed some of Denis Villeneuve's filmography, and I apologize, but I'm just going through like the core ones. Blade Runner 2049 is one of my favorite films of all time. It's amazing in every single way, shape, or form. Just
the only reason I haven't seen a Blade Runner film so far is simply because the idea of what are they called, like the robot replicants, the idea of replicants and just the like of them terrify me. Well, not terrify me, but it fucks with my brain so much that I literally cannot bear to think about it.
You should watch it for that exact reason.
No, it fucks with me way too much.
Yeah, but it's so good. Also, even if that's true, I think Blade Runner 2049 will be easier for you to watch because so you know the basic premise of Blade Runner is part of it is you don't know whether Deckard is a replicant or not, right? I'm assuming you've heard that because it's like just known.
Yeah.
Despite someone I knew at university asking me the question, wait, was Kay a replicant or not? Blade Runner 2049 establishes that Kay, the main character, is a replicant right out of the gate. So that's not a question. You aren't questioning who is real and who isn't real in that film, which might make it a little bit easier for you to digest. Obviously, replicants still exist. They are still part of that world. But, like, the main character is categorically a replicant, not a human. But then what is a human? That's the question that film raises. Is what does it mean to be
don't
human?
ask me this type of thing. I can't bear it. My small little pea brain can't handle
you
it.
so need to watch. I do like Blade Runner. I love Blade Runner 2049. I don't know if it's controversial to say this. I think Blade Runner 2049 is a better film in every single way than Blade Runner. And I've seen multiple different cuts of Blade Runner. There are so many different cuts that it's hard to categorically say which one's the best one, but 2049 I think trumps all of them. But I acknowledge the fact that 2049 would be nothing without the original Blade Runner. So, like, it owes everything to the original one, but I think it is better in every single way than the original. Either way, I love that world, and I'm excited for a TV series because I think a long-form story in that world is a very interesting premise. Did Blade Runner Black Lotus ever come out? That was a Netflix anime that they announced that didn't look amazing from the trailer because it seemed to be very cyberpunk rather than Blade Runner, but it came out last year. I should probably watch that after I watch Edgerunners. But yeah, it's such a good world and such a good film, and the idea of a series is really, really exciting to me. But as I say, I don't know Silka Louise's work, so I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, so apologies if I'm not. Ridley Scott is weird. Ridley Scott's just a weird filmmaker. He's so hit and miss. Like, I overall think I like him as I like a lot of his films and stuff, but I also really dislike a lot of his films. So, but I think it's probably a good thing that he's executive producing a sequel to his film. But also, interesting. But I just wish Denis Villeneuve was involved some way. But oh well, I'll live with it.
I will get around to watching Dune now that I know that there's going to be a sequel. So
yeah.
That is one work of his that I will definitely watch. I just don't know when. Probably like just before the second one comes out, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really, really enjoyed Dune. It was such a good film going experience. I don't remember how much Tommy enjoyed it because Tommy and I went to see it together. I think he overall did enjoy it, but I can't remember whether he was like infused about it or anything. But I will say, if you haven't seen it yet, I'd probably wait until just before the sequel comes out because it was definitely a case of me having read the book. I was like, oh shit, I'm so hyped for what they're going to do in the next film, if they get a next film sort of thing. But it very much ends at a point where it's like, that's not the full story. Like, that's not a satisfying ending at all. It's very much a part one. And I feel the way about like every part one, part two film I've seen, like the Harry Potter one, which is split in two, is the same thing where it's like you end the first part and you're like, well, that wasn't a satisfying film going experience because you clearly haven't finished the story, and Dune is the same thing. So, yeah. Anyways, I think it's cool. I'm curious to see whether it trumps Rings of Power to be the next most expensive TV show of all time, because Bladerunner 2049 was not cheap to make. So, yeah. You also need to see 2049. I have it on Blu-ray. Like if I come up in November, we can watch it on Blu-ray together. I kind of owned it. I briefly owned it 3 times on Blu-ray, accidentally.
I am also thinking about maybe coming up next month at some point as well, around my birthday or something.
That could be cool. I mean, that will be cool. I don't know why I said could, as if like there was a potential for it to not be cool. That would be cool. I would be up for that. All right. Next up, Constantine's getting a sequel.
I am so conflicted about this.
Okay.
Because I recently watched the film
for the first time, right?
I put it off for so long because I was like, it's not the Constantine I know and love. And like after watching it, I still feel the same way in that, like, unless they introduce like a new Constantine down the line that fits, you know, the sort of comic book version perfectly, Matt Ryan will always be the best Constantine. I think he just absolutely fucking nailed it. That being said, I did thoroughly enjoy the movie.
I think that's
it was a very good movie.
That's the thing. Is I've always felt like the Constantine movie. I don't think I saw it when it first came out because I was only 8 years old when it first came out. So I'd be pretty disturbed if I saw it when it first came out. But I think I saw it when I was like 13 or 14. And I've always felt like it's not Hellraiser. It's not the comic version of Constantine at all. Like, it might as well be a completely different character, because it basically is a completely different character. It's also a completely different world. Like, it's completely its own thing, loosely inspired by the comic. But I really love that character in that film, who is called John Constantine. I really like the world that they build. It oozes with style and substance, and I just want more of that world. And I agree with you. I kind of wish that it wasn't called Constantine and that it wasn't about a character called John Constantine, because then we could have room for there to be a faithful Hellraiser adaptation and also this movie franchise, and I could have both of them and they would have sort of similar vibes but also be very, very different. But instead, because we're getting a sequel of this, we're not going to get Matt Ryan in the DC universe anytime soon. Or another actor portraying a more faithful adaptation, because they're probably going to go down this route. And I don't think it will tie into anything else that they're doing in the DC universe. But yeah, it does mean that we're probably not going to get a faithful adaptation anytime soon. But also, I really, really like the Constantine movie. I want them to fucking announce that Peter Stormare's returning, though, because Peter Stormare is possibly my favourite portrayal of Satan ever. So I need him in the sequel.
Seen a lot of discussion recently. I don't know why. I don't know why this has suddenly come up. Maybe because like this was announced, but I've seen a lot of discussion about who people's like favorite on-screen Satan is, and honestly, I can't even really remember many at all. Like obviously Peter Stormare,
Tom Ellis.
Tom Ellis, obviously, and what's her name from that one movie? uh, God, I can't even fucking remember. It's that movie where the main character like makes a deal with the devil or gets like 3 wishes or some shit, and they will go awry. It's the Brendan Fraser movie. What is it? Fuck! God damn it! Oh, there is a British actress that plays the devil. Um,
Bedazzled,
Bedazzled. Yeah, that's it. That's a
featuring
sick movie.
Elizabeth Hurley.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I was gonna say Elizabeth, and then I was like, no, that's not it. Um, yeah, those are really like the only 3 Satans I can remember. Oh, and also Satan in Little Nicky, I guess. But um,
Yeah,
I mean,
what about Robot Satan in Futurama?
well, I mean, obviously he's the best, but like we can't count him because he's robot Satan, you know. Um, but I don't know. I'd still have to say my favorite is Tom Ellis, just because like it's not exactly. I can't really say who the best is or whatever because they're all so different.
Mhm.
Like it really just depends on your idea of like what you would expect the devil to be or how you kind of want them to be. I mean,
I think the main reason why I love Peter Stormare's Devil so much is he's both completely not what you expect Satan to be like, but also exactly what you expect Satan to be like. And that whole scene between him and John at the end of that film, I don't want to say what happens because even though it's an ancient film, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. That climax of that film is but like it's a scene between John and the devil, and it's just so fucking well written and performed. But again, part of it is that it's like he shows up and he's wearing like a nice, clean white suit. He's not, you know, red horned devil flame or anything like that. He's not wearing all black. He's wearing this lovely white suit, but also he's dripping inky blackness off of every pore of his body, sort of thing. And it's just incredibly creepy looking. It's just like, yeah, it's just, and again, Peter Stormare is just such a great performer. But
oh, I also forgot about Gwendolyn Christie.
I was going to say I haven't seen that episode of Sandman yet. My parents have COVID, so I haven't seen them recently, so I haven't watched anything beyond where I'd seen the Sandman last time. But I'm excited to see her portrayal of Lucifer in that show.
Yeah, I won't spoil anything, but I will say a lot of people like absolutely loved her take on Lucifer and thought she was like the best part of the show. And I just kind of felt like she didn't really do much.
Mm.
Like I like she was cool, but she didn't she didn't I feel like she didn't do enough to warrant like I feel like they were just exaggerating a lot. Like she didn't do enough to warrant that level of praise. So I'm curious to see what you think. But
I will say, you know, it's kind of ironic that we're talking about Constantine and how it's not a very faithful adaptation at all, but it's still kind of awesome. It's a similar sort of thing with the Lucifer TV show featuring Tom Ellis, is that is a spin-off of the Sandman comic. It's supposed to be the same Lucifer. It's not at all. It's a completely different take on the character. But I haven't actually watched Lucifer, but I've heard so many good things about that. I've seen clips of it, but I've never actually watched the show. But I've heard so many good things about that show. So it's a similar sort of thing where it's like, you know, it doesn't have to be faithful in any way, shape, or form, really, to be good and enjoyable. But yeah,
I think it's kind of a coincidence that we're talking about this because I have my Hellraiser book right next to me, and also a signed picture from Amenadiel from Lucifer.
nice. However, you aren't allowed to be a fan of Hellblazer anymore.
Why?
Because you just called it Hellraiser.
Oh fuck! I've been listening to Hellraiser by Ozzy Osbourne and Lemmy, and it like I've been listening to it basically on loop, and it's just in my head.
My favorite thing is you were holding up the comic, and I was like, let me just double check that I'm not insane, and it is called Hellblazer. Let me look at the cover. Yeah, it is called Hellblazer.
No, totally fuck that. But yeah,
That's the thing as well.
like,
sorry, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think I'm just biased now as well because I have seen Matt Ryan as Constantine, as like in his own series, especially, like he is so close to that version of him that going forward it's going to be difficult for me to like anything to a similar level because he is that character to me. And also, I am curious because I know that there was a Constantine film that was going to be made, and I'm wondering, is this that film, or is there going to be another one as well?
Yeah, I feel like the thing is, my feeling on this whole situation is like comic universes have clearly demonstrated that you can do multiple variants of the same character at the same time on screen. Like, it's not a problem. We've seen it with Spider-Man. We're currently getting it with Batman. It's Superman because you've got the DCEU Superman. You've also got Superman and Lois as a TV show.
The Flash.
The Flash, yeah, although that is coming to an end before the movie releases, but still, Ezra Miller has played the Flash at the same time as Grant Gustin. So audiences are smart enough to understand that there can be different takes of a character that can be released that are not related to each other. Even more so, though, you've got the perfect way to do it with this version, which is you could have Constantine as a franchise, which is Keanu Reeves as a John Constantine that's not comic accurate, then release a movie or a TV show or whatever called Hellblazer, which is comic accurate, but is also featuring a character called John Constantine. I'm sure audiences will be fine with both of those existing. You can also very easily visually show them as different. Comic accurate John Constantine will wear a beige jacket with a red tie and will have blonde hair, and the other one will be Keanu Reeves in a black trench coat with a black tie.
Yeah, I just it's such a strange state of affairs with Constantine, I think, because obviously they cancelled the original show prematurely. And it was a really good fucking show. And there was clearly enough there was enough desire from the fans to see Matt Ryan come back as Constantine that I think, and also just kind of like a resurgence of Constantine fans in general, regardless of whether it was Matt Ryan or not. There was like a lot of the Justice League Dark comics and stuff that kind of came out recently, and they did the animated shows of Constantine with Matt Ryan starring and whatever. I think there was enough desire to either carry on with the show or basically give him his own show again. But instead of that, in CW fashion, they were like, let's just have him on Legends of Tomorrow.
No. He appeared in one episode of Arrow first.
Oh, yeah, that one episode, yeah.
He gave Oliver a magical tattoo, remember?
Yep. Yeah. And, oh, God, I feel like they just missed the mark so much with that. And, like, the thing is, I don't even think it was necessarily like bad because it's still his version of Constantine, and I like, for all intents and purposes, I liked Legends of Tomorrow. I probably preferred that to like any of the other CW shows by the end, because all the other CW shows
were as ridiculous but were self-serious.
Yeah, exactly. It was like they were way past their expiration date. They were doing basically the exact same thing every single season, getting way more ridiculous, but taking themselves way more seriously. Legends of Tomorrow started out as a ridiculous show that was just meant to be a bit of fun and also had some like serious heartbreaking moments. Legends of Tomorrow is one of the only shows that has ever made me cry. That's that's an accomplishment. That's an achievement. And like I genuinely really liked every single character on that show. And it was what it was. It was a bit of fun, but had some, you know, just really good sort of character building and heartbreaking moments. And it just felt very true to itself the whole time. I stopped watching it eventually just because I like finished a season, and then when a new season came out, I just didn't get around to watching it and then never did. Like it wasn't because I started disliking it or anything like that. And in fact, it was literally the season that Constantine came on as a like permanent member.
Hmm.
So I would like to go back and watch that just for more Constantine. But at the same time, I know I'm not going to enjoy it as much because I feel like they just missed such a good opportunity to give him his own show again. And I feel like a lot of people would have preferred that. And then obviously I heard that they were going to be making a new Constantine film, but obviously it wouldn't be starring Matt Ryan. I'm just like, I don't know if I'm like, I was still kind of excited, but I was kind of past it because I was like, well, they've already had a really good opportunity to have like the best Constantine back, and they kind of biffed it by putting him in with a bunch of others that don't really let him shine
Hmm.
because it's focused on the group as a whole rather than him. And like, obviously, the best part of Constantine really is the fact that everyone like is so focused on the kind of like demon world and their like thoughts on him and his like future going forward, that to take that away and kind of put him in with a bunch of other people who have like stuff going on and it's bouncing around characters and everything, it just, I feel like it doesn't really work with Constantine.
He's not.
Like unlike
He's the sort of character where it's like it's fun to see him cross over with teams every now and again. Like he's part of Justice League Dark pretty frequently,
yeah,
but he's a loner. That's his shtick. Is he's a loner, and not in the same way that Batman is often portrayed as a loner, because Batman works well with the Bat family and the Justice League as well. But like Constantine's the sort of character where like no one really gets his world, and the very few people he lets in 100% get dragged down and usually have their lives destroyed by being in his orbit. That
mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, permanently putting him in another team does him a disservice. He, as I say, he briefly appeared on Arrow. I think he appeared on like an episode or two of Legends of Tomorrow before becoming part of the main cast. That
Yeah, I think
works
he did, yeah.
fine, but yeah, him being a permanent member, I think it wouldn't be that bad if he also had his own show, but he didn't have his own show. It was that instead of his own show, sort of thing, which is a damn
Yeah,
shame. But
exactly. And I don't think anyone wanted it. Like, no matter how good he was on the show, how much he like raised the value of the show, either, I don't think anyone actually wanted it. I'm pretty sure every single fan of his would have preferred that he got his own show again.
yeah,
And it's just so disappointing to me. It's a bit like, especially because I also feel like now that I'm kind of talking about it and thinking about it more, it is really a shame to me that they didn't have him in Sandman, because that would have been the perfect opportunity to bring in a more comic book accurate version of him
and
and
potentially do a
then give him
backdoor
another
pilot.
show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah.
So no,
Um,
I agree with everything you're saying. As I say, I like the Keanu Reeves John Constantine. I really like that film. I think it's a really cool film. It isn't the comic, and so
yeah.
I'm really excited for a sequel. But I would also love to see a comic accurate John Constantine on the screen. And it doesn't need to be Matt Ryan. I like Matt Ryan, but like if you're going to turn around and say that he doesn't have the film stardom you know, value to put him in a big budget movie or to carry his own TV show. That sucks. But you know, that is a business decision that is made from time to time. There are other actors who I think could knock that role out of the park as well. I like Matt Ryan a lot as that role, but like, I'm not sure how I feel about him visually. But Taron Egerton did a really good voice for John Constantine in the Sandman audiobook. That I wouldn't hate it if they cast him as a John Constantine in a couple of years. He'd have to be a little bit older, a little bit more grizzled. And again, I'm not sure because he's a little bit too like muscle built to be like the skinny, reedy John Constantine, but I could get over that. But yeah.
Yeah, like yeah, as you said, I will definitely watch the sequel, and I will most probably thoroughly enjoy it. But I think there is always going to be that little part of me niggling at the back of my mind, just being like, I'm disappointed.
It's kind of like watching any DC movie content that features Superman with Henry Cavill, or awkwardly cutting around the fact it's not Henry Cavill, and you're watching it and you go, man, if they just had a writer who knew how to write Superman, this would be a really good Superman experience I'm having right now. But instead, Henry Cavill's just being fucking wasted.
Yeah, and I like that. Just seems to be the overall problem with DC is
except for the
just,
Batman,
like, wasting their characters. Except for the Batman, of course.
But even then, like, I'm terrified they're gonna fuck it up. I'm terrified that they're going to turn around and go, Matt Reeves, you no longer have creative control. We want creative control again, and then it's just fucked.
Yeah, the Batman came completely out of left field. That is a whole exception.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for the most part, DC are just wasting potential. I mean, I don't like getting into things like this because, you know, I do understand the desire to have characters like Batgirl and Stargirl and Batwoman and whatever, and you know, for more representation. I get it. I understand it, and for the most part I support it. But the thing I don't support is they seem to be introducing shows that people haven't asked for instead of the shows that people have. Seems simple enough, right? But I think that is their biggest downfall. And sure, it might suck that, you know, they aren't getting like the sort of main character representation of those different groups, but like at the end of the day, it is like an industry, and there are fans of those particular superheroes and stuff that, you know, would rather have other superheroes. I mean, like, take Blue Beetle, for example. I think that's a good way of, you know, adding some more representation and diversity in. But also, I know a lot of people also have really wanted Blue Beetle, you know? And so I think that is.
And they got cock teased by that amazing appearance in Smallville, and then they've gone like 12 years without a live action Blue Beetle.
Yes. But there is just, you know, there are ways to do it, and I feel like they've ignored the easiest ways and decided to try something way harder and have failed at every single turn.
I will say this, though. I think the major thing you're missing is the demographic that the CW specifically has. Those shows are probably appealing to that demographic more than the shows that you're recommending.
Well, that's true. That is true.
Yeah. And so I think actually from a business point of view, the chances are that the shows that they're trying to make are cheaper and selling more, basically. I mean, I haven't watched a lot of CW shows. I haven't watched any CW shows in forever except for Smallville, because Smallville's amazing, and I'm 2 episodes away from the end of it. It's so good. It's not. It is and it isn't. It's such a mix. But anyways,
it's so bad it's good.
No, it's sometimes it's so bad it's good, but also sometimes it's just genuinely really, really good. Like, as much as I was memeing on the Blue Beetle appearance in that episode, they also had Booster Gold appear in that episode, and it's such a good version of Booster Gold. Like, it's perfect. He's just such a fucking dick.
Was that Was that Ted called Blue Beetle though? Because it wasn't his
No,
suit.
it's I can't
It was the
remember.
Jaime Reyes
Yeah,
version.
Jaime Reyes, but he gets it off. So the premise in that episode is that Ted Cord designed the suit, and then I can't. Ted Cord is Ted. Oh God, is Ted Cord the second Blue Beetle or the first Blue Beetle?
First.
Okay, so Ted Cord in Smallville designs the suit. Whoever the second Blue Beetle is the first person to test the suit, but it kills him. And then they're like transporting the suit, and Jaime almost gets run over by the vehicle that's transporting the suit in its beetle form. And Booster Gold saves Jaime, and then the beetle escapes and attaches itself to Jaime. So Jaime becomes the first person to become Blue Beetle in the Smallville universe, but it's a suit designed by Ted Cord, but Ted Cord isn't ever Blue Beetle. He's just like a scientist, basically. So Ted Cord does appear in the episode. But
yeah, I did forget that the CW shows basically became less superhero shows and more like romantic dramas.
yeah, but even then, it's been that way for a long time. Like, people are like, CW changed. It did change, but it wasn't always. Like, I feel like when people think about the good CW era, they think about things like the first couple of seasons of Arrow. It's like, okay, but how often is Oliver Queen just shirtless doing workouts for extended periods of time in the first couple of seasons of Arrow? Who do you think they're trying to appeal to with that decision making?
I guess, but it was also like a lot more.
It was more balanced in terms of what they were trying to do, but
It was Oliver's story. Like later on, it became like as soon as they started like flooding and just changing the team, and like having like I guess the best way I can describe it is
they
the
tried to.
lightning rod thing from the Flash, just constantly like with him and Iris and whatever, and like going into the fact that the superheroes can't actually do anything without the team behind them. Like it became less about those superhero stories and more about like
I think the thing that always rubbed me the wrong way with, because I don't mind them transforming the show into a show about a team rather than a show about just a particular superhero. I think it's particularly with Arrow. I think the aim was to try and create something like the Bat Family, but with Green Arrow instead. And Green Arrow has had his sidekicks like Speedy in the comics, but like I think that was the vibe. They got their little underground bunker. Which I don't think they ever called the Arrow Cave, or maybe they did, but it's called the Arrow Cave in the comics because it's a Batman ripoff.
It is. It is the Arrow Cave. Yeah.
Okay, but and they're bringing in characters that are directly linked with Oliver, like Speedy, but then they're also bringing in other characters like Mr. Terrific and such like. And I don't think that's inherently a bad idea to try and make it then transform so it's not just a solo character that you're telling a story about. I think what rubbed me the wrong way is that both a mixture of the story feeling less focused, not as in it was sharing the limelight, but less focused. There was less of a drive, and also just it's maybe sounds like a small thing, but it rubs you the wrong way when you're watching it. I think is because they've introduced this massive team where I think at the height of it, Oliver had like 4 sidekicks in the field with him, but they don't really change massively the stakes of what he's fighting. And it means that he's less competent because Oliver in season 1 clears a room of like 10 guys on his own without breaking a sweat. And then Oliver in season 5 has 4 backups and he's taking on a room of 10 people. And it's a struggle because they're trying to give everyone a moment to be the hero. It's just like... I mean, I guess he did get thrown off a cliff. Like, I guess he has a reason to be shit at his job now. But like... Yeah. To be fair, though, I think...
Was he from Tekken?
I do think, though, the season with Prometheus in it, which I think is season 5, maybe season 6, and then there's the season after that where Oliver goes to prison, it started to get a little bit better again, and then it got worse again. But yeah, I think they did try and listen to fans and try and change things up a bit, but yeah.
I
Either way,
personally felt it just started to go downhill when Arsenal left. I
who?
think Arsenal was probably my
Oh,
favorite part
Arsenal.
of that shit.
I
Roy
really
Harper.
liked his story arc. I know the actor left the show because of basically mental health problems, so it
Yeah,
couldn't really be helped, sort of thing. It's unfortunate what happened there, but yeah.
I think it's yeah, and also he came out as well, and I think he was dealing with that as well.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but I would still love an Arsenal and Red Hood movie or series. I think that would be so fucking good.
Yeah. Be a bit weird though when one person's got a red hood and the other person's got a red mask, but the person with the red mask is called Red Hood.
True.
Anyways, we briefly mentioned the GTA 6 leak. Samo wanted us to talk about it. I don't think there's much to say about it other than it's a shit situation, but hey, the hacker's been caught.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't really care about GTA 6 at this point. I haven't cared about GTA in a long while.
I'll play it and probably enjoy it. That's kind of my takeaway on it. But it was kind of impossible not to see the leaks when they happened, and I just thought, it looks like a game in development.
Yeah.
So it's nothing to write home about. The thing that's worth writing home about is the dumb people's takes who said that it looked like shit, and people going, it looks like shit, it's been in development for 3 years, and it's still just like blocks, and it's like, yep, here are all the other video games that are 3 years into development that look like that. That's what video games look like at this stage in development. Games take a long time to make. So yeah, I don't know. Skirt physics. I saw skirt physics. That was kind of cool. One thing I will say, and I maybe it's a rumor, or maybe it's been confirmed now, but I've seen somewhere online that it's going to be set in Vice City, which does kind of line up with the leaks because the leaks show you like a city with palm trees and whatever. I will say it's not the direction I was hoping they'd go in with GTA, just because Vice City, although a beloved location from GTA, is visually very similar to Los Santos, which is where GTA 5 came out, is set in, sorry, and GTA 5 has been out now for over 10 years. So going to another city that's like very visually similar feels a little bit, I would have preferred going to somewhere
England.
not... England could be cool since that's the origins of GTA. But even if it was something like Liberty City or like GTA's version of Detroit or something, that could be fun. Or even GTA's version of Las Vegas or something could be fun. But I think, isn't Vice City like inspired by like Miami, if memory serves?
I think so.
And then Los Santos is obviously LA. Visually, those two are not that far off from each other. They're both like tropical beach cities. So yeah, it's not a massive problem, but I was just like, not as cool as I might have hoped it would have been. But I still think Liberty City is my favorite city from a GTA game.
I don't really have a preference.
Fair enough.
As long as I get to run around and shoot people,
You'll
it's
probably
the
get to
same
do
to me.
that. Chances are you'll be allowed to do that in GTA 6.
We can hope.
Splinter Cell. They're doing a remake of Splinter Cell. Ubisoft is doing a remake of Splinter Cell. And apparently, the remake will be rewritten to be more relevant to a modern day audience. I don't know. Have you played much of Splinter Cell?
Yeah, I've played a few of the games. I think still my favorite is Chaos Theory.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
just have very, very good memories of that, playing that with a friend. And
yeah, I mean,
just
Chaos Theory is like a 10 out of 10 game. The other Splinter Cells for me vary from like a 7 to a 9, but Chaos Theory is like an easy 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I don't have any memories of the actual story. All I remember is spending all my time shooting like a sticky camera and and just like making the noise
Yeah,
just to
chirping.
like
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
to like have the guards come in and be like, what was that?
Did
And then
you
just
try
like,
and play for like an almost perfect score as well? So you just be sitting there going like, I'm not willing to give up my good score because you won't come to the camera, so we're gonna play this fucking game of chicken, motherfucker.
I didn't even care.
Oh, okay.
I was just so entranced. I was just so entranced by getting the people to come in and then immediately forget and then come straight back in again. I just found that hilarious. That was the best time I've ever had on a game.
But for me, like I really like the original Splinter Cell. I don't think the originals. Obviously, we just said Chaos Theory is the best one. I would say it goes for me. Chaos Theory, in terms of like both gameplay and story. Chaos Theory, Pandora Tomorrow, 1, Conviction Double Agent, Conviction Blacklist Double Agent. So 1's decent. The thing I don't get. Okay, so 1 is. God, it's been a while since I played this. 1 is either to do with a war in Georgia or you're stopping a war from happening in Georgia. So maybe they're changing it to be a location that's more embroiled in war at the moment, although I don't know whether Georgia is a area of the world that's at peace. I'm really woefully uneducated on such things, but like, you know, maybe they're going, ooh, let's make it about the Russian-Ukrainian conflict instead. Please fucking don't. But like, you know, maybe they're trying to make it more relevant that way. But other than that, I can't think of any massive things that aren't relevant. Like I don't get what you need to rewrite to make the story more relevant to today's audience, other than if what that means, which is what I'm scared it might mean, is, oh, we're going to update it so it's more accessible for younger audiences, i.e. more action and explosions and booms and running and gunning, in which case that's not fucking Splinter Cell. But like,
Maybe
the political stuff in the original Splinter Cell is still as relevant today. So I really don't know. Update the tech. They're using smartphones rather than flip phones. Like, you know, does that constitute it being rewritten at that point? Like, I don't know.
Samantha Fisher.
I'm curious to see whether they bring Michael Ironside back, because Blacklist, they didn't cast Michael Ironside because they wanted to do performance capture. And they brought back, I can't remember the actor's name, but funnily enough, he plays Whitney Fordman in the first season of Smallville. He's Lana's boyfriend that Clark is jealous of in the first season of Smallville. That's Sam Fisher in Splinter Cell Blacklist, which, don't mind that actor, that voice is not Sam Fisher's voice, and it really doesn't fit when Sam Fisher looks to be about 60 in Blacklist, but has clearly a 30-year-old man's voice. Michael Ironside is the perfect Fisher voice actor. Sam Fisher has shown up in both of the most recent Ghost Recon games in DLC, in which he is played by Michael Ironside again. So I kind of hope they bring back Michael Ironside, but at the same time, if they're doing a remake of the first game, potentially trying to reboot the franchise, it would be kind of the perfect time to recast with a younger actor if they wanted to. But also Michael Ironside is Fisher. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those games where I remember having good times playing them, but I don't think I ever paid attention to the story whatsoever. Like, I know for sure that I've played Chaos Theory, Double Agent, maybe a tiny bit of Conviction, and a little bit of Blacklist, but I literally I couldn't tell you what Splinter Cell's actually about.
Well, to be fair, I think the first 3 have storylines, but it's not like super story driven. Like, it's quite. The story serves as a thread to connect the missions together. That's basically what it is. Whereas Double Agent, Conviction, and Blacklist feel much more kind of modern gaming in the sense that they are like, it's very story driven, and the stories are of varying degrees of quality, but they are story driven games. Whereas, as I say, like Splinter Cell 1, there is a story, so that mission 1 is connected to mission 2, which is connected to mission 3, but it's not the center focus of the game, really. So yeah, I can't fully remember the story of the first one, other than I remember it's something to do with the country of Georgia and stopping a war that's either going on or is about to start. And I know that it ends on an oil rig. Pandora Tomorrow is about stopping a terrorist group from activating a bioweapon, and you can't just go and assassinate the leader of the terrorist cell because every single day he phones a number and says Pandora Tomorrow, and if he doesn't say Pandora Tomorrow because he doesn't make the phone call because he's dead or captured, then they release the bioweapon, which I've always thought that's such a fucking cool concept. And then Chaos Theory is, I can't remember the full plot, but I remember that it ends with a third echelon agent having betrayed the organization. Double Agent, you're a double agent taking down John Brown's army. Conviction, you're getting revenge on your daughter's killer. No. Yes. But then it turns out your daughter's not dead, and then you're stopping third echelon from basically taking over the American government. And then Blacklist, third echelon's no more. It's now fourth echelon, and you're stopping a British spy turned terrorist from releasing the Blacklist, which is a list of all secret agents around the world. It's basically the plot of Spectre, isn't it? Pretty sure Spectre has the exact same plot, except it's not a British agent, but he was an agent for Britain, but he wasn't British. So yeah.
Or was it Skyfall?
No, yeah, you're right. I mean Skyfall, not Spectre. I got those two confused. I was thinking of Javier Bardem's character, which is in Skyfall. But yeah, I mean, look, I hope it's good, but I don't know. I'm not convinced that Ubisoft could make a Splinter Cell game feel like Splinter Cell. Like, even Blacklist is like, not, it doesn't really feel like Splinter Cell. It feels like some weird modern hybrid of Splinter Cell with something else. Splinter Cell is a slow, methodical stealth game. Like, you don't want to get into firefights in that game. Where versus in like Conviction and Blacklist, doesn't matter. You can get into firefights, it's absolutely fine. And I'm just not convinced that Ubisoft wants to make that sort of game anymore. So when they announced the remake, I was like, ooh, and now they've announced that they want to rewrite it, and I'm like, ooh, this is bad omens. But if they bring back Michael Ironside, they'll probably get my money.
I mean, it depends, because I mean, they are showing willingness to do that with the new Assassin's Creed. Potentially.
True. Yeah, they are saying that they're talking about wanting to return to Assassin's Creed 1, 2, and Brotherhood sort of vibes. They also announced it's going to have Unity's parkour, which is so cool because Unity has the best parkour in any of the Assassin's Creeds. They've clearly listened to fans who've been saying that for years and gone, all right, we'll do that parkour then. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good point. They do seem to be listening to fans when it comes to Assassin's Creed, and they're trying to give both sides of the fandom the games, but the way that they have just fucked the Tom Clancy brand in the last couple of years. I mean, I don't hate Wildlands and Breakpoint. I think they're an alright time with friends. They are not Ghost Recon games, but they're an alright time with friends. Then I've never played The Division. It looks okay,
it's not worth it.
But it doesn't look like a Tom Clancy game to me. And then what was that fucking Anarchy FPS shooter game that they released or announced recently that just looked fucking awful? I think they announced it last year. Anyways, it was just like, it was so, like, at least the Ghost Recon games and like Rainbow Six Siege and whatever are loosely based on Tom Clancy IPs, but then The Division isn't based on the Tom Clancy IP. They just slapped the Tom Clancy name on it, and then there's this new one which is fucking, hold on, what was it called? Tom Clancy's X-Defiant was what it was called. And yeah, it just looks so fucking awful and un-Tom Clancy. The XD of the word X-Defiant is an XD emoji. So
that's good.
Yeah, it's great. It's so good. So yeah, as I say, I think they've just fucked the brand. I'm not sure they can be trusted with it anymore, so I'm just worried about them doing a Splinter Cell game. But as I say, if they bring back Tom Clancy, I'll probably buy it. and at least check it out. Did I say bring back Tom Clancy?
Yeah.
I don't want them to
Yeah.
bring back Tom Clancy. That would involve some weird Disney necromancy sort of thing. If they bring back Michael Ironside, who is very much still alive, I would probably buy it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in giving it a go. Might be a way of me getting like a fresh start on the franchise.
Plus, if they bring back like co-op and Mercs vs. Spies, then there's at least some decent stuff there to have fun with as well. So,
yeah, I don't really have any feelings on it at the moment. I'll just kind of see how it goes, see if I find it interesting, when they release a little bit more about it.
now, I can't remember if you can do this in Chaos Theory, but I might actually change my mind and say Pandora Tomorrow is better than Chaos Theory, because I know you can do this in Pandora Tomorrow. Pandora Tomorrow might be better just because you can interrogate people sometimes by lying on top of them and just tapping them on the top of their heads when you ask them a question. Like, you'll be like, "Where's the money going?" And they go, "I don't know, I swear." "Do not lie to me." and it's just like a button prompt to just like tap them on the head, and you're just like basically like lightly punching them in the back of the head. I've just spent so long just going, "I swear I don't know anything else. I swear I don't know anything else." I was a sadistic little fuck. There's also a great quote in an early level of Pandora Tomorrow when you grab a guard from behind and like start to interrogate him, and he goes, "Please, you're the scariest person I've ever met. I'll tell you whatever you want to know." "You haven't pissed yourself yet." "Okay, maybe you're not the scariest person I've ever met," or something along. He makes some reference to having not pissed himself at the sight of Sam Fisher, and it's great. There's such a good humor to Sam as well that I really hope they keep in. Anyways, last thing that I want to talk about, hot off the presses, because it got revealed at literally like 3 minutes before I posted it in the Discord. HBO, no, not HBO. It's The Last of Us Day, which is like the anniversary of The Last of Us coming out. So they have revealed the first full official teaser trailer for The Last of Us TV show. They had done like a tiny little teaser at the end of like an HBO Max stuff coming to HBO Max trailer that they did a couple of months ago, but this is the first proper teaser. Did you have a chance to have a look at it before podcast?
I did.
What do you think? I know you haven't played the games, but what did you think from watching that teaser trailer?
I am wholly uninterested. There isn't there aren't any, real reasons for that. It's just I was watching it and I was just like, I just don't think it's my cup of tea, really. Like, it just, I don't know. It just, again, to me, it just feels like one of those, it's just another zombie thing. Like, I don't know, you've said before that it's, it is more than that, and like it's just this, the two main characters' story that really is the heart of the games, and I'm assuming what fans are hoping for, the heart of the series as well. But I still just, it's just the setting. I just don't find the setting or the genre interesting anymore. And also, I've never really been one for like the sort of like heartfelt story between or just like that type of story. Basically, I don't find it very interesting, and I'm not really sure if it would hold my interest.
Okay. See, I kind of assumed that would be your reaction just because you aren't particularly interested in the game either. I will say, again, it's kind of echoing what I've said before in the podcast, which is that, oh god, my CC Cleaner advert telling me that I should clean some junk files off my computer popped up, and it was visible on the podcast briefly. We're not sponsored, but we could be. It's not like The Walking Dead, where The Walking Dead, I think, it's an adaptation of a comic book, but it overstayed its welcome. It also didn't adapt the comic in multiple areas, where when The Walking Dead was good, it was a story about people surviving in a zombie apocalypse, but it was a story about people, and then where it started to taper off was when it became repetitive. The Last of Us as a story is not about people trying to survive in the apocalypse. That whole thing that The Walking Dead is about, of like the deterioration of people, where they're starting to be more willing to do violent acts and whatever, and the day-to-day of surviving and having to go and scavenge food. The Last of Us is not about that. So all of that, which you've seen a lot of in a lot of media, none of that is what The Last of Us is about. It's present because the characters are navigating a post-apocalyptic world. They do occasionally have to scavenge for supplies. I don't know how much the TV show will feature that, but in the game, if you want to upgrade your gear, you need to scavenge for supplies as you're going through the level. So you're encouraged to go into a room that's not, if you're going down a corridor in a straight line, you can go into a room on the left because there might be supplies that you can upgrade your gear, in the way that many video games have that. So it's like, it's not essential to do it in the game, but it's there. But the story is not about that. The story is entirely about these two people and their journey together. You can tell that story in any setting. And case in point, that story has been told in dozens of settings, both before The Last of Us, if we're being honest, but there was a massive explosion of it happening after The Last of Us. There's a game that you have played which basically has the same story. God of War 2018. Kratos and Atreus' story is very, very similar to the Joel and Ellie story. Not exactly beat for beat, but like the general premise of it's these characters going on a journey together and discovering both themselves and each other during that journey. That is what The Last of Us is about. And the reason why it's set in the post-apocalyptic world is to try and heighten that drama, because it's, if you're in a post-apocalyptic world, that's more extreme than if it's just two characters traveling across country. Case in point, Logan is, many people compared Logan when it was revealed to be incredibly like The Last of Us, and again, very similar premise. If Logan was just set in America when like global warming is getting bad and whatever, it would work, but it wouldn't be anywhere near as interesting as when you set it in the X-Men universe after the X-Men have basically died out. That then makes it way more interesting, right?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why I'm probably not that into it, because it is just kind of like a normal guy and a normal girl in that particular setting. Like, there's nothing really appealing to me about those characters. Like, both examples you just said, with Logan and God of War, like, both of those main characters have something way more interesting going for them, rather than just being, they are father figures. Like, Logan is set in the mutant world, and he, have these badass fight scenes where it's not just shooting guns at each other. It is him going full on like beast mode and like throwing himself at people and ripping them to shreds. And similarly with Kratos, again, very similar, just going full on rage mode. And
and you think that Joel doesn't do that?
What, with a gun? Or
with his fists, with a metal pipe. This is the thing, is that like what is fun about, and I'm again, if you don't want to play it, if you don't want to watch it, that's fine. But I think the key thing is it is very similar to those two characters. But you're right, he's a normal human. But that also makes it really interesting, which is that in God of War, you're playing the God of War. You are a rage monster. In Logan, he is Wolverine. He is a rage monster. They are abnormal. In The Last of Us, Joel's a normal guy, but he's also a rage monster. Why is he a rage monster? How did he get there as part of that journey and part of that discovery? And I think that's really, really appealing to me. I genuinely think if you watch the show or if you play the game, you will enjoy it, particularly because the game isn't that long for a video game. It's probably about 10 to 12 hours, particularly if you play it on like an easier setting and you don't do all the extra stuff, which also means for you it's probably about 2 hours because you're you. So yeah, to me, The Last of Us is one of the most what's the word I'm looking for? Influential, that was the word I was looking for. One of the most influential pieces of media I've ever consumed. It changed, and I'm not trying to like oversell it here. It changed the way that I look at and approach. God, I'm bad at words today. Look at and approach writing. Now, to be clear, The Last of Us came out in 2012, which is 10 years ago. So I was 15 at the time. Fairly young in my consumption of media, so I'm not saying it's therefore necessarily the best thing ever, blah, 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 blah. But when it hit me as a 15-year-old, before I'd started studying film and everything, it was the exact type of media that went, I want to do that sort of storytelling. I want to move people in that sort of way. And The Last of Us Part 2 is equally as good in my opinion. And so that game will always have a very special place in my heart. And it inspired me as a writer when I then started studying film, and I have even more appreciation for it since I started studying film. All of that said, I'm real worried about this TV show. I'm very mixed bag for me, because video game adaptations don't tend to be very good. There are obviously exceptions to the rule. Arcane, I guess Cyberpunk Edgerunners is kind of an adaptation of a video game. It's more of an adaptation of a tabletop role-playing game, which a video game also got adapted from, but it is set in the same universe as the video game, so I guess it's kind of an adaptation of a video game. Castlevania, Tekken Bloodlines, you said you enjoyed. So, like, there are examples of good video game adaptations, but most video game adaptations... Sonic. But most video game adaptations range from bad to nothing to write home about. So I'm real worried it's going to end up in that area. And because I like it so much, it's kind of like the idea of Daredevil coming back. I'm like, I love you so much that I'm real worried that I'm going to see you bastardized and fucked up. But it's being made by Craig Mazin, I think his name is, who was the showrunner and lead writer on Chernobyl, which is a fantastic, Craig Mazin, fantastic HBO miniseries, haunting but superbly made, and it's also being written by Neil Druckmann, who is the writer and creator of the video games. So it's like in good hands writing-wise. I like Pedro Pascal. I like Bella Ramsey. They're bringing back some of the original cast as well, which is cool. So I think it's got a lot of the right ingredients to make it look good. Visually, it looks pretty good from the trailer. But also, there's part of me that's just like, it's... So in the little teaser they revealed ages ago, like a couple of months ago, which was an HBO teaser, but it had a little bit of The Last of Us in it, there was this scene that they used from the video game with the exact same dialogue from the video game, which is Joel saying, "You have no idea what loss is." And I don't think Pedro Pascal delivered that line badly by any means. I think it's a very good delivery of that line. I'm sure it'll be fine in the TV show. But I have heard that line from Troy Baker half a dozen times at least. I've played the game several times. I've watched other people play that game. That scene is one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the game. I'm not going to go into it beyond that, but it is such a heartbreaking scene to watch. It makes me cry every single time. That seeing another actor deliver their own version of it just feels weird. It doesn't feel bad, but it feels weird. And just seeing these little snippets, I'm like, how on board am I going to get with this reinterpretation of these characters that I love so much? So I'm like, I just don't know whether it's going to be for me. I feel like it's almost destined to be a little bit of a disappointment to me, because I don't think it will ever come anywhere close to being as good as the video game for me. But at the same time, I'm really excited that my mum, who I've multiple times offered to play The Last of Us in front of her on easy difficulty so she can experience the story, and she's gone, I don't like animated stuff, so I won't like video games. She will watch a live action TV show if I tell her to. So I can introduce this story that means a lot to me to my mum, and I think that's really exciting. So even if it's like 80% as good, she won't know what she's missing because she won't experience the video game. So, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I think what you said earlier about it sort of coloring you as a person, in the way you approach writing, I think that's exactly the difference between, us as people, and probably why I don't find the concept of it interesting. Is just because like most of my life, most of my interests revolve largely around like comedy, or different genres infused with a certain level of comedy. And that's just kind of where I lean on. Like I never really go in for anything like wholly serious.
Mm.
And that's the kind of vibe I get from the game. Like something dark and like something where you actually get I don't know how to explain it. Like something where it makes you really think about if you were in those types of like circumstances, I
It goes
guess,
back
is
to
the
the
best
Blade
way I
Runner
can
thing and
put it.
your little brain not wanting to cope with it, right?
Well, it's not that I don't want to cope with it. It's just I just
I know, I'm just
like,
ribbing on you.
yeah, it's just. I mean, maybe it is. I mean, maybe
I mean,
maybe it is. I don't want to cope with it, but like, it's also just because it's just like I guess I just prefer like I have enough going on inside my head as it is.
mm,
Like I prefer humor because it the same way I prefer fantasy and sci-fi to any other like types of genre. It is a way to like escape reality, I guess. And humor is also that for me. And so that's why I would like to write a comedic fantasy novel.
mhm.
Like that is exactly my type of thing. And that's probably why I loved the Vox Machina series so much, was because it was literally like all of my favorite things rolled into one.
Mhm.
Um, and like obviously I do occasionally watch stuff outside of that. Like I'm sure I have seen a couple of really serious stuff that I just can't think of at the moment. But yeah, it's just usually not what I go in for.
That's fair.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, for me, I enjoy a lot of comedy, but for me as a writer, the core thing for me is that when I am writing stuff, I am trying to very much explore what my understanding and perspective on the world is. And so like take something like the songs campaigns in D&D, which is a D&D campaign. My primary goal is for you guys to have fun. But and I mentioned to you just before the podcast that I lie in songs. I lie to you as the players so that you know stuff in character that is objectively not true from what I know about the lore. That is part of me trying to explore something about theology and history that I have no idea whether the players as a whole will ever pick up on. Tommy might, because he's been in all 3 campaigns so far, but also it's Tommy, so I feel like if I asked him what I'm trying to say with those campaigns, he'll be like, I don't know. But like there is some thematic stuff that I'm trying to explore there that's quite deep, but also I don't want it to ever get in the way of you guys having fun. So it's always in the background, and it's more so for me than it is for anyone else. But if you guys get it, then awesome, sort of thing. So I'm not sure I would ever be able to write something purely, I guess, for entertainment. Like for instance, Willow. I loved Willow. I'm not sure Willow has that deep of a message that it's trying to say. But it's
No.
fun, and I love it. So like I guess there is a difference there, I guess, in styles. That being said, Last of Us is fucking hilarious, bro. Ellie gets this pun book and she just starts reading puns to you, and you can press a button so that she tells you another pun, and then Joel just goes the whole time. It's great.
I mean, I guess.
Why did the cannibal lose his hands? No, what was it? Ah, fuck the cannibal one. What's a pirate's favorite letter?
R.
No, 'tis the C.
Oh, fuck's sake.
That's a joke from that game. Probably not originally from that game, but it's in that game. But no,
I mean,
the thing I will say about The Last of Us, there's not a lot of comedy. There is occasional comedy bits, but it is a very self-serious universe. One thing I really love about it, and this is possibly the biggest thing that I've taken away as a writer, is that if you are doing something dark and depressing and serious, there needs to be scenes of genuine beauty and calmness interspersed. And so The Last of Us, one of the things I really like about it from an art direction point of view, is it's a post-apocalyptic world that is fucking beautiful. Like, flooded cities where grass and trees are just like taking over buildings and stuff. And I'm just like, this is beautiful. And there are these quiet moments when you get to just be in that world and just enjoy it. And the first game in particular is really nice because Ellie is a 14-year-old girl in that universe, and it's set 20 years after the apocalypse, so she never knew the world before the apocalypse, which is really, really fun because then you have scenes, I don't want to go too much into it in case you ever do play it or watch it, but there's like a scene where you walk past an abandoned ice cream truck, and she's like, what's ice cream? And you have to explain to her what ice cream is and that people used to drive around in trucks and sell ice cream to kids, and she's like, no fucking way. That's like complete fucking nonsense. And he's like, yeah, they had a little tune that they played, and all the kids in the neighborhood come running. It's this like really beautiful moment of just like childhood innocence. And part of the beauty of that game is that those moments build that relationship with this character that you're charged with protecting. So that I was thinking to myself earlier, you watch the Clone Wars and you see Ahsoka grow up. And I feel like this weird sense of pride when I'm seeing Ahsoka being a badass in Clone Wars Season 7 or in Rebels or whatever. But it's pride almost like, I don't know, like a proud older brother or something. When I look at Ellie in The Last of Us, I feel like I'm her dad. I'm like, I have to protect this child. And then in The Last of Us Part 2, when she's an adult, I'm like, I need to protect this child, but she's an adult, and I can't protect her because she's an adult now. Like, so it's a very interesting experience, and I think part of that is because you're interacting with her in a video game rather than being a passive viewer. You are building that relationship through being in that world with her. So,
and I would also just like to say it's not like I just like overt comedy. Like I don't want it to come across as, there have to be absolute
like
guffaws the whole time. Like, I think my best example of like the type of thing that I love, which is why he's my favorite director, and I know your thoughts on this, but my favorite director is Tarantino. I love pretty much every single one of his films, and Django Unchained for the longest time was my favorite film ever. It was surpassed by Scott Pilgrim after I watched that multiple nights in a row. I had seen it before I did that, but for some reason I watched it again one time and I was like, oh my God, like, this is just amazing. So it did get surpassed, but it is still very close. And I think the thing with Tarantino's films is, again, it isn't overt comedy. Sure, there are some parts of them where it is just really funny for whatever reason, but I think the scene from Django that I love the most, spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen Django, but you should really watch it because it's amazing. But there's a scene where
you don't have to have seen like Attack of the Clones or anything either to get it. It's or in all seriousness, the other Django films, because it's not related to the other Django films either. But anyways,
yeah. So Dr. Kinschultz has basically just like, I guess, purchased Django, and he takes him to this like small town and goes into the was it bar? Is that what
Casino, cantina, saloon. That's the one. Saloon.
the saloon? Yeah. Um, and it's like before opening, and the owner is just in there like doing something, and he turns around, sees Django, and freaks out because there's a black person in his establishment. I should mention, if you haven't seen this, this is set in like the Wild West.
And has lots of racism as part of it. It's not a racist film, but
Well,
there's a lot of racism in it.
yes, exactly. And so he freaks out, and Dr. King Schultz tells him, remember to get the sheriff. So the dude runs off to get the sheriff. Anyway, King Schultz and Django chat to each other, and then eventually the sheriff comes back. Dr. King Schultz basically walks out, shoots the sheriff in the chest. He's like dying on the floor. He goes up, shoots him again. He's dead. They go back in and they wait for the marshal this time. Then the marshal comes with the guns trained all around them, people up on, the roofs and, down on the streets as well. And the marshal basically tells them to come out, and, it's just very angry, really. He's like, nobody understands what's going on. Like, for all they know, this guy has just, like, rode into town with a slave, entered an establishment causing trouble, and has killed their sheriff. And when the two eventually come out with their hands up, they ask them what they were doing, and Dr. Kinschultz reveals that he wasn't as good a man as everyone thought they were, or as everyone thought he was, the sheriff this is. In fact, he was actually a criminal, a wanted criminal, and he's a bounty hunter who just took out his bounty. And now now he's just walked in, killed the sheriff, and now they actually owe him money. And like, it is so well spoken, like, I can't do it justice. Just the dialogue is so well written and so well acted by Christoph Waltz. And then afterwards, he just kind of like puts his hands down, and Django just kind of like turns and looks at him, and he just goes, "Damn!" Like, it's just so well written, and it's just like laced with humor. Like, obviously, he's just killed a man and has like basically demanded payment for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just a funny situation or like a funny outcome in a non-funny situation, and it's just written so perfectly and works so well. And that is my favorite thing, and that's why I love that movie so much. Like, just the dialogue in that movie is just godly, and also the music choices. The music choices are just everything about it. It's just really good. You should watch it.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I'm telling the audience who haven't seen it, if anybody actually watches this far or at all.
I get what you mean, and I think I described The Last of Us Part 2, which I have played twice, and I've watched a buddy of mine play it through in full as well, so I've experienced the story 3 times. And I remember when I finished it the first time, I described it to possibly you, but definitely some friends, so probably you as well, as being an emotional journey that's a little bit draining. In all honesty, like, playing it through that first time, I played for over the course of like 3 days. I felt physically and emotionally drained by the end of it, because it's that sort of taxing on you as a person. It's not a pleasant story. It's a pretty depressing story, and part 1 is a weirdly kind of almost idealistic, hopeful story in a way. Some people might disagree with that, but like, compared to part 2, which is far more pessimistic in a way, part 1 explores themes of love, part 2 explores themes like grief. So, you know, they are polar opposites in that way. So while very similar, they're also very different. And yeah, as I say, the first time, part 2, fucking draining in a way that certain movies have been. I don't want to necessarily directly compare it, but a similar sort of experience was watching 12 Years a Slave, where you're just like, fuck, this is a heavy movie to watch. Like, it's a really good movie, but fuck, is it heavy. Replaying and watching a friend play part 2, it gets easier. Like, once you know what's coming, it's way easier to just enjoy it as a game rather than experience it as an experience. But I do get what you mean. It's like, you've got to be in the right frame of mind to just experience something that will drain you. It's not a bad thing. And well, it won't be for everyone, but I don't think it's a bad thing to be drained by media. But it's not always what you want, and having fun with something is far nicer to experience. Like, part 1 is far nicer because it's a story about love rather than a story about grief and pain. So I do get what you mean. What I would say is that it has its moments which are, as I say, like, beautiful, and there are funny moments, and it's not just all doom and gloom, and it's just brilliantly written. But yeah,
I think the key difference there is it seems more like a story where it is largely depressing, but there are a few moments of levity. Whereas I would prefer largely comedic, but the small moments that do have an impact.
I wouldn't say part
So
1
it's
is
kind of
necessarily
reversed.
primarily depressing, but it's primarily dark. I would say that.
Right.
But it's, yeah. It's really hard to say much without giving too much away. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's depressing. There are definitely depressing beats in it, a lot, but there's plenty of nice moments where it's like you can almost forget that you're in an apocalypse and everyone's dead.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, maybe I will give it a go eventually, but it's not pressing.
Maybe
to me.
what we
And I
need to
mean,
do is, at some point, we can add it to our docket of things that we keep on promising and then never delivering. We'll have Alex plays The Last of Us for the channel, and at least I will watch you play it and react with you.
yeah, maybe we'll. Well, let's say we will do that, and then, as you said,
Just never do it.
probably never do it.
Where's the piston cup at, bud? Did you see my post, by the way, about the piston cup and my new idea?
I think I did. I can't remember what it was though.
So, if you don't remember, lore for the Higgledy podcast here. The Piston Cup is a tournament that Alex and Tommy announced getting close to a year ago, probably. And the idea is they're going to play a cars video game, and whoever wins the tournament wins, or doesn't so much win a prize, the loser loses something. For Tommy, if he loses, he will be forced to play the entirety of the Borderlands franchise with the rest of the boys. So we'll play through it together. Again, this is never happening because they won't fucking do the Piston Cup. But that's the plan, is play for Borderlands 1.
We would also then have to get everyone to play it as well, which...
I think the biggest problem will be getting you and Tommy to play it, because Callum and I are on board.
Well, I would play Borderlands in a heartbeat. I mean...
In theory. But you didn't last time. You played it for like 2 nights and then went back to playing WoW.
Well, yeah.
But anyways, so it'd be Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, Borderlands the pre-sequel, Borderlands 3, and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
So it'd be all of that. Now, if Alex loses, we managed to say yes for him, because he refused to say yes for himself, so he is consenting, but we had to say it for him, to play Elden Ring in its entirety. Here's the thing, Alex doesn't want to play Elden Ring. Now, Tommy doesn't want to play Borderlands, so this seems like a fair trade to me. However, I discovered something so much better, Alex. There's a
Oh
mod
yeah,
that's
the
been
co-op
released.
one.
There's a mod that's been released called Flawless Co-op, which means that you don't have to summon a partner. You can just play co-op from the beginning, which means Tommy can play Elden Ring with you and help guide you through the game. Doesn't that sound nice? You'll have a guide. You'll have a little friend to help you, but we will have friendly fire turned on. Because I was watching my friends play it, they didn't have friendly fire on. I was like, wouldn't this be funny if friendly fire was a thing in this mod? And the guy was like, it is, let me turn it on. And it just went to shit instantly.
Oh,
Like you're
that
wailing,
sounds so
you're
much
wailing on a
worse.
boss, but you're doing these big sweeping swing attacks, and your buddy is behind the boss but gets hit with your big sweeping swing attack, and you kill him. It's great.
Oh, well, luckily it won't come to that because we probably won't ever do the Mr. Cup.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways. What is the media that you have been consuming in the week?
Shut the sounder fuck up, you gunk, and listen to the Higgledy Piggledy podcast.
I don't think there's only. I mean, there's a couple of things. The first thing that comes to mind is I have started the series Reacher.
Oh, yeah. For some reason, I thought you said
Yeah,
Preacher, but missed out the P, and I was like, wait, no, there is an Amazon show called Reacher. I remember that.
yeah.
Featuring
So
the guy who said, wet and ready, bro, in Smallville when he was playing Aquaman for the
yeah,
first time. Alan Richardson, I think his
yes,
name is.
Alan Richardson.
Yeah.
Also played Hawk in Titans. Also played Raphael, I believe, in the TMNT movies.
Apparently, fucking
Um,
hated that, but yeah.
yes. So Reacher is based off of some books. I can't remember who
The
wrote
Reacher
the
books.
books. Yeah. Um, and they also made, not sure if it was one film or a few with Tom Cruise.
2 films.
I haven't seen them. Never really paid much attention to it. But I remember that my nan and granddad were watching it because I think he's read the books.
By Lee Child, by the way.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure he has read the books actually because I remember him saying that, like, he didn't really like the films because Tom Cruise was basically nothing like Jack Reacher.
Jack Reacher is supposed to be a giant, towering, muscular, blonde man who's like over 6 feet tall, and Tom Cruise is like 5'6", 5'7", and
But nothing.
5 foot fuck all, yeah. Brown haired, and he's not out of shape. He's clearly an incredibly fit man, but he is not a towering muscle.
Yeah, he's not a very imposing
tank.
figure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To be clear, would not want to fight Tom Cruise. He would beat the shit out of me. Have you seen that man in Mission Impossible doing his own stunts? But he's not a particularly imposing figure.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
Particularly compared to Alan Richardson.
Oh, yeah, Alan Richardson is just like, he's massive. I didn't actually realize until watching this series, like, even though I've seen him in
I don't think he's ever
like
been as
Titans,
big as he is in Reacher. Like in Titans or Smallville, he's muscular, but he's not a fucking tank. But
yeah, he really is just fucking giant. And yeah, so I didn't really pay much attention to the films or anything. And I remembered my granddad saying about it, and I saw like a clip of it on YouTube, just one fight scene.
was it the one
And I
where he's
watched
like,
that one fight scene.
it's not 4 of you, there's actually 2 of you, or whatever. Like it's outside a bar and there's like four people about to beat him up or something.
I did see that one as well.
Okay, that's the only clip I've seen of him in the films.
Yeah, he basically says like, oh, something about 3 kids with broken wrists, and the guy says, "There's 4 of us."
Can't
and he
you
goes,
count?
"Well, yeah, one of you." No, yeah, and he goes, "One of you needs to be able to drive the others to a hospital," and then like it's literally like maybe a 5-second fight scene where he just absolutely rinses these 3, breaks their wrists, And then like the one remaining guy goes, I know where the hospital is. Yeah, and the fight scenes just look so good, and I was like, oh man, it even looks like comedic as well. I love this. And yeah, so I've just finished like the second episode. They're an hour long each, so like still a decent way in basically. And I'm really enjoying it so far. It's a lot of fun.
I
Like,
heard good things.
yeah, a lot of people seem happy with it. A lot of people are very happy with him as the actor. I know a few people said that he's kind of wooden, but I haven't really been getting that impression. And
Not,
also, as
I've not
like
seen much from the TV show, but one of the clips I've seen from it, I would not describe him as wooden. I'd describe him as incredibly charming. It's a scene, I don't know if
yeah,
you've seen it yet, but it's where he breaks the handcuffs and then goes, "You got a
yeah,
recycling bin for these?"
yeah, yeah, the zip ties.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I mean, he's meant to be like a stoic badass, or at least that's the impression I'm getting, you know, but he also likes to sprinkle a little bit of, you know, sarcastic humor in here and there. Yeah, that's exactly the impression I'm getting, and the fight scenes are just really fucking cool. Um, like the supporting cast are like decent. I don't really have anything bad to say about them. And so far the story is very interesting. You know, I'm hooked. Like I'm gonna see it through to the finish. Yeah, it's just a really like fun show basically. Think James Bond, but entirely more brutal. Um, yeah, I yeah, really enjoy it. I would definitely give it a watch if you find the time.
Fair
Um,
enough.
I haven't been keeping up to date with She-Hulk, and I haven't seen the last episode of Rotolop. Lotterop. Fuck. Um, what is
You're not,
that?
so you didn't get my reference earlier of Lotta Rob.
No.
Oh man, I made a cool reference to Lotta Rob, and you laughed, but I think you probably just thought I was being a weirdo.
Uh, um,
All I'm gonna say is, do you mind like a tiny spoiler?
no, go ahead.
When I said "give the meat to me raw," that is a quote from the latest episode of Lotta Rob.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, because obviously I've been watching it with Tom, but
Oh
Tom's
right, I didn't
been
actually know you were watching it with Tom,
busy.
but fair enough.
Yeah, he's been busy the last few days, so
Yeah,
I've just not been bugging him about it. Um, completely forgot about this. Don't know how. Samo and I watched the first three episodes of Andor.
mm.
Um,
Oh yeah, we I guess we'll talk about that in media consumed. We completely forgot to talk about fucking Andor. Yes, okay,
yeah,
let's talk about Andor now.
yeah.
I was like,
Um,
we're probably gonna finish this podcast early. Probably not anymore, but oh well. It's fine. I've only consumed
um,
Andor, so
yeah. Fair enough. That's probably my last thing anyway, other than just to say read my caption again. That's basically what I've been doing the last few weeks.
yeah.
So the it had a very strong beginning.
Hmm.
I felt.
Very Blade Runner
I
esque. You wouldn't know because you haven't fucking watched it.
Yep. And then I was pretty much bored for the rest of the first episode, and
Okay.
then I was a little less bored in the second episode, and then third episode was pretty good.
Yeah.
That's basically my overall take on it. It was like, as you said before we started watching it, it was very slow to begin.
Yeah, I think I
And
said immediately after finishing the 3 episodes, I was like, really liked it. I'm very glad they released 3 episodes in one go. It was, I think, all I said,
yes,
right? So basically the same thing. I wasn't bored, but I know Andor has been the Star Wars show I've been the most hyped for since it was like first kind of announced. I was like, ooh, I like Rogue One a lot. Cassian Andor's a really cool character in that film, but I feel like we don't get to know any of the characters enough to really love them. And maybe some people disagree with that, but it's a war movie. It's more about the events and how that affects the characters than it is the actual characters themselves. I was like, this guy who's like a rebel, he's a good guy, but he's very morally grey. a show about him and his morally grey era sounds awesome. And then they released the teaser trailers and whatever, and I was like, I'm so fucking hyped for this. So I think I would have been fine personally if they had just released episode 1. I think the vast majority of people would not have bothered to tune into episode 2 if they had just released episode 1. It's not because episode 1 is bad, but they spend 3 episodes building up to a really, really satisfying, explosive 3rd episode. But that means that you need to watch all 3 episodes fairly quickly to not feel put off by a show that's not got a lot of momentum in the first 2 episodes, because it's what the first 2 episodes are is just slow winding of tension and putting more and more pressure, and then pop in episode 3. The pressure breaks, and that's when it becomes really awesome. And the showrunner, who I don't want to misname him. I think it's Tony Gilroy, but I want to double check. It's because if it's not Tony Gilroy, I'm going to feel really bad for saying someone else's work. It's Tony Gilroy, thank you. Tony Gilroy said that's very much the intention, and that going forward, the show just kind of expands massively in scope and gets just like bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think people who are maybe not super satisfied with the first 3 episodes will hopefully find episode 4 onwards way more satisfying. But for me, I was fine with it, but I also was very aware that it was slow. So
yeah, and like, it takes a lot for me to be actually bored watching something, and even at the time, I was like questioning myself, being like, am I actually bored, or am I just like exaggerating how I'm feeling at the moment? And like, I came to the conclusion I was actually bored. Like, I did start to think maybe, like, especially during like the latter half of the first episode, I was like, should I just boot up Final Fantasy and play that and just listen to it in the background? But like, I didn't, because I was like,
because you knew I wouldn't forgive you.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, Blade Runner 2049 is like 3 hours long, and you have to watch it with full attention. But you made it through Batman, so you'll probably be fine with Blade Runner. But still, you're not allowed to play Final Fantasy while watching it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Batman was like, the Batman didn't leave me like questioning my sanity, though.
I think the Batman is faster paced than Blade Runner 2049, just full disclosure. But it's similar length, and it's a detective story, so it's comparable. Anyways, I digress. You were saying you were feeling bored.
Yeah, I was just so fucking bored. And then like the episode just kind of ended. And I was
That's very much how I felt about episode 2, as I just went, oh, you're just ending there. Okay. So my read on it, I don't know if they had always planned to do a 3-episode premiere, because they announced it was a 3-episode premiere when they pushed back the date, but I don't know if they'd said it was only going to be a 1-episode premiere before they pushed back the date, so I don't know. But it feels to me almost like they wrote a movie to be the intro to this show, and then from the sounds of things, the rest of the show will be episodic. But that, when you then splice that into 3 roughly 45-minute episodes, it does have, episode 1's ending wasn't too bad for me, but episode 2 I was like, oh, we have just ended the episode and we're going into the next one now. Okay.
And like that, I remember when we were watching it that Samo was basically just saying, like, we've just been introduced to these characters, we don't really know what they're about, but then they're kind of all going off to do their own sort of thing. And like, I guess what's her name? Bix?
Bix, yeah.
Bix. You know, like Cassian. This might be getting spoiler territory, actually.
Pause it for a moment, continue talking about non-spoilers, and you can come back to it. I'll remind you it's about Bix.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, but before I get onto that, then, just generally, I just felt like I don't know how to put it. Like everything that they were showing in the first episode, I just didn't care about. Even though that I now know that it was obviously setting up for stuff to happen later on. I still just feel like there was no lead up to the lead up, I guess. It just kind of, it just wasn't interesting what they were doing, and I just found myself not caring. Like whenever anyone else other than Andor was on screen, I just lost interest entirely. And I know that Samo basically felt the same. Um, even got to the point where I even like said, like, "Are you bored? I'm bored." And Samo was like, I'm not like bored." And then that's when he said about basically Andor, being the only one that we actually care about at that point. Um,
Okay.
most of the other characters I just kind of wanted dead. Like, I just didn't find any of the other characters like interesting or likable in really any sense.
That's interesting because I would say I have the polar opposite reaction. Where I would
Really?
say it's slow paced, but I care about every single character. Even to be clear, this show is very, 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 very clear in its social commentaries. But even the cop character, I'm like, you're a dick and you're evil and you're abusing your power, but in your head you're trying to do the right thing. Like, I see what you're trying to do, which is investigate the murder of 2 of your colleagues. So he feels entitled to be doing all of this fucked up shit that he's doing because he thinks he's in the right. Now, that's a dangerous path to feel that level of entitlement, but like, I like the fact that a lot of these characters are operating in these morally grey areas, and yeah, I would say I care about pretty much every single character they've introduced us to. There is one exception, which we'll get to in spoilers, but I also think that we're probably supposed to dislike that character. So,
Is it by chance the dude with the most grating fucking voice I have ever heard?
that depends on which voices you dislike, but it is, I'll say, the staircase. Does that mean anything to you?
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah. That character.
Oh, yeah.
I will say there was one moment when I like it from a creative point of view. I wish I'd heard somewhere that this was going to be a thing before I started watching the show, which is during the flashback sequence. I was like, let me just turn on the subtitles. Oh, it just says that they're speaking whatever alien language they're speaking.
I was gonna...
And I went,
Yeah.
okay. This scene's going on for quite a while, and I don't... Let me just make sure that like no one's reported that Disney Plus hasn't like uploaded the subtitles. Let me just make sure that like this is ready to watch and they don't need to patch this in like an hour or two, because like I watched it pretty much as soon as it dropped. Went, okay, no, it's a creative choice. That's fine. Now that I know it's a creative choice, totally on board with it. I think it's quite cool the fact that we don't need to know what these characters are explicitly saying to each other. It's Cassian's memories. Minor spoiler alert. So there's flashbacks of him as a child and he's speaking an alien language. I think it's quite cool that, it's his memories, so we don't need it to be translated because they wouldn't be translated in his memories. And the storytelling works without us being able to understand what they are saying to each other because we get the intent of what they're saying to each other, right? Now, again, that might potentially propel more people into boredom if they're already not super on board with the style of the show and the pace of the show, then having these somewhat lengthy scenes where we don't actually understand the dialogue, we just understand the intent of the scene, that might be more off-putting. But for me, I was like, I'm cool with this. This is a cool creative choice. But as I say, I wish that like someone had told me that beforehand, because I did pause the episode and go, are my subtitles broken? They don't appear. Okay, Google, right, it's a creative choice. Cool. Turn off subtitles, go back to playing the episode.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to talk about this bit anyway, and that is one of the reasons why I did get very bored, was because there were so many of those scenes and they did drag on that while that was happening, I was like, well, I don't understand what's happening anyway. So
you didn't
like,
understand those scenes then? Because I would say I thoroughly understood those scenes.
up until the point where, again, I can't really say anything without
Up until
spoilers.
episode 3's point? Is that where you were going to go with that?
Pretty much.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fair enough.
And like, it's the same exact way that I feel about Final Fantasy 14. Actually, it's like now that I understand.
So
like,
you're saying next week
on,
your caption's going to say, "I am a Cassian Andor addict."
Yes.
If you do,
I mean, possibly because
if you do say that, can you change it to "I am a Cassian Andor slut"? Just because that would be more funny.
Okay, I will do that. Yeah, it's like now that I understand like what was going on, and I've seen the better part of it now, like it makes sense to me. But it doesn't really make it any better. Like as with Final Fantasy 14, I still had to suffer through all those dreadful moments to hit gold. It's like I can't do anything about it now. I'm past it, but it happened that there were those moments where I had no fucking clue what was going on, and I was just awfully bored. And yeah, like now that I know what was happening, it doesn't make me feel better to know that it was leading up to something. All I remember is, fuck, those scenes were boring.
Yeah, I wasn't. I wouldn't say I was bored at any point. I thoroughly enjoyed the show, but I also I was bought in before the show started, so that might help a little bit. Like, I was incredibly hyped for this show, so I was going into it really looking forward to it, which might help a lot of me being on board with those creative choices and just being like, cool, that's the show we're getting. For me, my biggest takeaway from it is this. Yes, it's slow paced. Again, I'm fine with the slow pace. Very glad they dropped the 3 episodes though, so that you get that story arc in one contained thing. And they haven't fully confirmed this, but from the sounds of things going forward, it will be episodic storytelling. So an episode will end with that particular chunk done. So it won't just abruptly be like, we're done with this episode next week. It will be, maybe it will be a part 2 sort of thing, but it will have an ending to it in an episode, which is good because, again, episode 2 did end very suddenly, I felt. But I think episode 3 would not be anywhere near as effective without episode 1 and 2's build up. That I think is the bottom line. There is this incredibly slow build-up of tension mixed with this world building, which makes you understand the mechanics of the particular planet that they're based on. It makes you understand the situation. It makes you understand the different characters' perspectives and relationships with each other and their thought processes. And then shit hits the fan, and it's so much more powerful because you've got all of that build-up, where it's kind of like, it's like, imagine we had Aragorn. I recently watched Lord of the Rings Extended Cut, but I didn't feel the need to talk about that in media consumed. But imagine we have Aragorn's whole for Frodo scene in Return of the King, and then him charging at the Black Gate, and everyone charging with him. But we haven't had Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers, to lead up to that climactic moment. It's a similar sort of vibe where you do need that build up and that establishing to get the reaction that you want, where genuinely, I don't want to be too overhyped, but genuinely, episode 3 might be some of my favorite storytelling in Star Wars ever. I fucking loved episode 3 so much. All I'm going to say before we get into spoilers, if you've seen the teaser trailer, That's What a Reckoning sounds like, which I fucking loved from the teaser trailer, is about 10 times better after you've watched the first 2 episodes of that show, and then you get episode 3.
I can't say I agree, but
Fine.
I understand where you're coming from.
Should we get into spoilers?
Again, like, yeah, it's just 2 different mindsets, I think. And as you said, like, you were hyped from the get-go. I went in, like, just basically saying to myself, I'm going to watch it because it's Star Wars content. I don't really have any other feelings on it. I'm not really sure what to expect. And, like,
it's very not Star
by the end
Wars,
of...
which is an interesting thing. Like, it Star Wars There's I don't know if this is actually confirmed to be true, but there's a supposed George Lucas direction he gave on A New Hope, which is faster, more intense, and Andor is the opposite of that.
I don't even think it's that. I think it is very Star Warsy. I just didn't resonate with the story as much, I guess. Like what was actually being shown. Like I loved the action. Sure. I loved the tense moments and whatever, and as you said, that's what a reckoning sounds like, that bit was like awesome. Like I loved that whole like part of it, but I don't necessarily feel the same about it being the best storytelling. Like it,
I can't explain more as
I
to
don't know.
why until we get into spoilers, so that's why I kind
Yeah,
of left
let's
it at
get
that
into
statement.
spoilers.
Cool.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to get something out of the way. When Rogue One released, a lot of people said Cassian Andor feels quite Kyle Katarn-esque. If you don't know who Kyle Katarn is the main character in the Dark Forces and Jedi Knight franchise. Beloved character from Star Wars Legends. He's also the person who stole the original Death Star plans and gave them to the Rebels in the original Legends continuity. So this kind of roguish character who's a bit of a smuggler, a bit of a morally grey character who is involved in seeing the Death Star plans. People are like, oh, and he's got a beard. People are like, oh, it's the canon version of Kyle Katarn, basically. Which is a bit of a strenuous kind of connection. It's a guy with a beard who's a bit of a morally grey character. He doesn't have the Force. He doesn't wield a lightsaber. He doesn't have Kyle Katarn's personality. But they lent into it because they gave Cassian the fucking pistol from Dark Forces, the Briar pistol, and I was so happy to see that. It's such a beautiful gun. It's smaller. They made it slimmer and smaller, but it's a Briar pistol, and I'm so happy. Anyways, that's I just wanted to get that out of the way. It's a spoiler thing. Yeah. It's my favorite gun in Star Wars.
Fair enough.
So the show basically, the first 3 episodes are a story of Cassian. It starts off with Cassian looking for his sister. He ends up killing 2 corporate sector police officers, basically, who are trying to rob him, and he fights back, accidentally kills one of them, and then executes another one. And so the story then goes with him knowing he's fucked up and trying to escape from the planet he's living on, trying to scrounge up enough money to get off that planet, and the corporate sector police investigating and then going after him. Is the tension building up. So throughout the first 3 episodes, we're having a very in-depth look at these characters on this planet, what they do in their daily jobs, the kind of relationships they have with each other. You have a lot of Cassian kind of calling in favors and getting this sense of who he is to these people, and there's a lot of this kind of like begrudgingly helping out this guy, but they do help him out because he's their mate sort of thing. And that's a lot of what takes up the first 2 of these 3 episodes, is this Cassian goes and visits someone. We have a little indication of the world that they live in and the relationship they have with each other. Cassian goes and meets another person, rinse and repeat sort of thing. Which, again, if that's not a vibe that you're going to necessarily like, I can understand why that would be boring. But to me, I was loving that because it felt like real dialogue rather than Star Wars dialogue. But that's a lot of the first 2 episodes is just Cassian going somewhere and talking to someone, and then Cassian going somewhere else and talking to someone else sort of thing.
Yeah, like, and I think especially getting that after such a strong opening, like, it was funny. I mean, it was kind of a joke, but at the same time, I was like, oh, wow, if this is the way the show is going, then yeah, I will love this. But when, he accidentally killed the first guy, and, the other guy sees and he's like starting to beg. I literally said, like, he's got to kill him too. No witnesses, right? And Samuel was like, hey, yeah. And I was like, oh, come on, he has to. Like, don't do the classic like Disney move of like, trying to get out of it a different way or whatever. And I was just like, come on, has to. And then when he just immediately goes, bam! I was like, yes, I love this show.
See, a lot of
And
people on Twitter seem to be surprised that happened. I'm like, do you not remember how this character got introed in Rogue One?
I don't.
So he meets with a rebel informant who has a broken leg, or like a leg and like crutches or whatever, and then stormtroopers are like closing in on their location, and Cassian's like, "We've got to get out of here," and starts to like climb up a wall, and the other guy's like, "I'll never be able to climb up after you," and he's like, "All right, good point." Climbs back down. He's like, "It's all right, bud. We'll be okay." And he's just like holding his shoulder, like, "We're gonna make it through this," and then shoots him in the back, and then runs off. He just kills a guy so that the stormtroopers don't get to him. I'm like, of course he's going to kill this guy who's begging for his life. Cassian doesn't give a shit. He is that morally grey. He's willing to kill unarmed people if it means that he gets to survive.
Then I would also say they fucked up because he had the captain of the corporate sector or acting captain, whatever he was, at his mercy with his newfound friend telling him to kill him, and instead he tied him up.
Would have revealed his location. And they already knew his identity. He doesn't gain anything by killing the guy.
I guess. Yeah. But yeah, like I need to go back and watch Rogue One again.
Yes.
Um,
Rogue One I always enjoyed, but I've grown to appreciate that film so much more in recent years. Ever since someone said to me, "It's a war movie, not a Star Wars movie," I went, "I'm going to watch it like a war movie," and went, "It's much better when you watch it like a war movie rather than a Star Wars movie." Because I think my major complaint about it originally is that I can't remember all of the main characters' names, and you don't get to know them that well. But then a friend of mine went, "Try and name any of the characters in Saving Private Ryan except for the 2 Private Ryans that feature in that film," and I went, "Fair point."
yeah. But yeah, that was the highlight for me until obviously the 3rd episode. But there were just moments where, like with the flashbacks and everything, I was just like, oh, surely there could have been a different way of doing this. And as I said, I do understand why they did it and what they were going for, like especially the parallels at the end. There is only like the one thing from it that just makes absolutely no sense to me though. Was I still don't understand why Cassian, little Cassian, just started like freaking out and like smashing shit up. Like,
So
what was that about?
so it's very, very like lightly alluded to in the first 3 episodes, but presumably they're going to explain it more in future stories. You know, when they're heading to the ship, Cassian briefly stops and like looks over at a valley where it's clearly been like mining, but like there's no activity going on. It's like an abandoned mine or whatever.
Yeah.
So that planet basically got fucked over by the Republic. It used to be a mining planet, and then there was a mining disaster that basically killed off most of the planet's inhabitants. So Cassian hates.
I'm assuming including all of their parents.
Presumably, yeah, because it's just like a village of kids. So, yeah, there was a mining disaster that like killed all the miners. So now it's just miners, but spelled differently with an O rather than an E, living alone in a forest.
Nice.
So he starts to basically get angry because like he sees these people, these outsiders, as being the people who are responsible for him losing everyone, basically. That being said, there is an interesting thing with that. So that's the clues that we seem to get, and it's maybe the Republic fucked over the planet, maybe the Separatists. Here's the thing, though. Who did the ship belong to that crash landed on the planet? Because his adoptive mum, who I can't remember the name, let me just check the name. I've got
Marva?
Marva, thank you. Marva says they killed a Republic agent. The Republic's going to be swarming here any minute, right? But all the people that we see, all the like bodies and that one guy who kind of wakes back up, are wearing Separatist uniforms with Separatist logos on them, not Republic logos. So if Marva's correct, the kids killed a Republic agent dressed in a Separatist uniform, seemingly carrying some dangerous substance. That's interesting. That's an interesting little thing. And presumably, I'm assuming the console thing that he's trying to sell is from that ship. So, and they left that behind. So potentially we're going to have some big reveals about maybe the Republic not always being... What I'm wondering is basically whether it was like a Republic Black Ops operation where they were pretending to be Separatists in case they got found. People would blame the Separatists for whatever happened rather than the Republic, which is an interesting concept and would fit into this morally grey Star Wars story rather than Republic is good, Empire is bad, Rebels are good, Empire is bad, sort of thing. So.
Also, those kids totally let their friend get killed.
Oh yeah, I mean, I did think that.
Time to they had ample time to do something.
I get why Cass didn't do it because it's his first time out, and like he clearly sees the guy and hesitates. But the others, it's that one kid who bullied Cass and said, "You're not coming with us." What a dickhead! He could have saved her.
They all could, like.
I know, but like particularly that one who was like clearly like, "No, you stay out of this." Yeah. I assumed he was the second in command. He didn't do jack shit either.
Yeah, they see him literally get up and aim his gun at her, and then there's so many seconds of just like silence, and I'm just like, what are you gonna?
But they are little kids. This might be their first time potentially going to kill someone, and they all didn't want to kill someone. Like it's whatever.
I mean, I guess, but like still, man. And then he shoots her, and everyone's suddenly then like shocked, as if they didn't see this coming.
Again, it could be little kids the first time ever seeing someone shoot someone. Like, come on. They're all young.
Maybe, perhaps. I'll let them off.
One thing I really like, though, with the flashbacks, and this, again, is going back to the episode 3, where episode 3 really starts to pick stuff up. I think it's really interesting, this... So I just love the themes that this show is playing with. There are so many big statements that they're making and big challenging things that they're exploring with this show that I didn't expect Disney to ever explore, because I feel like Disney would not want to get that political. So they've got obviously things like police corruption and just policing in general as a theme. But they've... So Martha kind of fucked Cassian in that moment. Like, I know that she thought she was saving this kid. She did not try and, like, take Cassian to his people or check whether he had any people. She just abducted... No,
she just straight up kidnapped a child.
Yeah, but in her mind, she's being a savior, and I think that's an interesting comment on, like, white savior mentalities, because there are definitely people who, in the past, and possibly in present, have seen people from other cultures that maybe to a Westerner might seem less civilized, and think that they can improve them by taking them out of that environment, which is kind of a fucked up viewpoint, but you can kind of understand in that moment why she would make that decision. And that's, again, that's a really interesting kind of theme to explore in Star Wars. I guess it's not wholly alien Star Wars, because the Jedi kind of do that with younglings as well. They like go, oh, taking you. But like it's interesting to see this person be like, I need to save this kid, but in doing so basically separates him from everyone he's ever known, and he probably wouldn't be the person he is today if it wasn't for her. So
I mean, yeah, I guess like I guess she might have, like, if it's difficult. Like I kind of see where you're coming from, but at the same time, she never really said like, oh, you know, it's horrible here, like let's take him away because of the planet he's on. It was literally because, like,
but she never returns him to that planet or anything.
Well, exactly. Like, I guess.
Yeah, she could have gone home, fled the Republic, and then gone, it's been a week. The Republic's probably gone. Let's take you back to that planet, drop you back off of that ship. But, you know, she clearly...
And then she just assumed that, like, the Republic would have found the kids.
My assumption is that she maybe at one point she intended to take him back, but she grew attached to him and thought this impoverished kid in rags, I can give him a better life than this, which I think that is a theme that they're trying to explore. There are a lot of themes with like marginalized cultures and people that they are exploring with this show. So I think it's very intentional that a white woman saves a person of color child by taking them away from their home. I think that is an intentional commentary that they're doing. So, and I don't think that makes her a bad person either. In her mind, she's doing the right thing. She did it from a point of view of love, but it's kind of a fucked up thing to do. So,
yeah. I wonder if she put him in a closet under the stairs.
You noticed it was Petunia Dursley's.
Well, it was Samo that noticed it, but yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I've seen her in other stuff other than Harry Potter, but I feel like, God, she can act. And like, I don't feel like I experienced that ever during Harry Potter.
Yeah, no. I mean, there was like the bit where she was just shouting at Andor, and I was like, this is just a bit like over the top. Like, it seemed like it wasn't even just in the instant, like people can sort of like get worked up and shout, but the way she was doing it, I was like, it just feels a bit like overacting.
Nah, I didn't feel that, but fair enough.
But yeah, I'm glad Tim died.
Yeah.
Fuck Tim.
Yeah, but even then, I can understand why Tim did what he did. He's just also, dude, Bix is hot and she's with you. Chill. Like.
Yeah, well, he only did it because he thought he was getting cucked.
Exactly. And I'm just like, dude, just have some self-respect, some self-confidence. Like.
Yeah.
But apparently, in like the background details of these characters, apparently Cassian and Bix have had like an on and off again relationship. So supposedly, he would know a little bit about that, I guess. So
right. But yeah, the character,
but yeah,
the character with the most grating voice is the guy directly under the like main corporate sector guy. The Scottish one.
Dude, the guy who says shit?
Yeah.
I love his voice.
I hate it. It actually pains me. When I first heard him speak, as soon as he said the first couple of words
right now to Scottish people.
Not being racist to Scottish people. I like the Scottish accent. His voice, though, is fucking god awful.
Are you saying you don't like his line about pockets fermenting? Because that line in the trailer is fucking great.
I don't like anything he says.
There are pockets fermenting,
I just don't
sir. Descent.
No, he doesn't say. No,
pockets
he doesn't
of descent,
say sir.
Fermenting. He does say sir.
He doesn't. He says sir. That's literally all me and Sam were doing every time he was on screen.
But are you seriously telling me you didn't like it when he goes, shit?
I liked that part, and that was the only.
Do you know what I was?
still
the
like
first thing I thought of when he said shit, and also I can't remember if it's him who says it or someone else. I think it might be him saying it. Someone says bastard as well in the first 3 episodes. I was like,
huh?
We can finally swear when playing Star Wars Saga, and it can be canon. We can't say fuck, but we can say shit, crap, and bastard, because crap is the same as shit. So I'm gonna let that one clear. Other than that, it's Dang Theric and it's Sif Spit and Carabast and all of that stuff. But we can finally say shit, crap.
I'm gonna go
bastard.
I'm gonna go full Friday night dinner and say shit on it. But yeah, no, I can't stand his voice. It was so grating to me. Actually hurts to hear it.
Also, the other thing I loved about this show is the whole time I was watching, I was just like, I wish I lived in the Star Wars universe just because the fashion is so cool. Cassian's trench coat. I mean, I've thought this for years, but Cassian's little trench coat I love. The little hard hats that they wear at times, I'm like, those are cool. I want it all. I want to wear it and not be seen as a weirdo. I want to wear this and not be seen as a weirdo, okay?
I feel like it, I mean, it's clearly not a very wealthy area. Um, so I did like the idea of like thinking that the studio was just like, okay, if anyone has any like clothes to donate, literally just whatever, just anything you can find that you don't want, we will find a use for it. And it just seems very much like they just kind of just threw, they just kind of like put their hand in, pulled a load of shit out, and said, "Here, stick this on." And
But
I
it
very
also
much
still,
like
it still feels like Star Wars though. It doesn't feel like they just like took stuff from like, I don't know, Primark bargain bin and just threw that on their actors. It feels like they did that but then turned it into Star Wars or something. Like it all fully feels like it's in that universe, which is good. I loved the droid with the stutter. I also loved Diego Luna gave just like such a brilliant interview, and he said something about the droid. I can't remember the droid's name, but he said it's like when you have an
B2 emo.
Is it really?
Yeah, at least that's what it says in the subtitles.
Emo's
B the number 2 and emo.
Emo's not dead. He said that it's like when you have an old dog who you love, but they're kind of, it's painful to be around them. Meanwhile, they'll do anything to be in your shadow. And I was like, that is such a beautiful way to describe an old dog as doing anything to be in your shadow. And I kind of love that you applied that to a droid. Like, that's cute. I like that. It's a nice description.
Yeah, I just looked it up, and yeah, I was correct. It's B2 emo.
Excellent. But yeah, it all comes to a head in episode 3, where the police characters, the corporate sector police, show up, and this show is definitely a commentary on police abusing their positions of power. Holy shit. We have them beating up a woman because she runs away from them. They don't think that she's a criminal, but she sees them and tries to run away, so they chase after her, beat her up and handcuff her to a wall, then shoot her boyfriend.
And then leave her.
And leave her there. Which, unfortunately, that's all too real with some things that some police have done. And we also have them barge into Marva's home and basically hold her at gunpoint, which obviously then the people in the streets are like freaking out about that. And they also like try and hack into B2 Emo. Was that his name, or 2B Emo?
B2 emo.
B2 Emo. They try and hack into B2 Emo, and then she's like, "Don't let them. That's illegal." And then they tell her to shut up, which police have definitely tried to cheat their ways into people's personal devices in the real world. So that felt very real, and I really like that they're not pulling any punches. It feels like with the exploration with that sort of stuff. It's I don't know for certain that Tony Gilroy would use the hashtag all cops are bastards, but it feels like that from this show so far. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And then obviously, I think this is what made, for me, the first 2 episodes, which I would have enjoyed anyways, but the first 2 episodes pay off in the 3rd episode, was when you have the entire town starting to ring their bells. It's just like, that's what I mean when I said that's my favorite bit of Star Wars storytelling in years, was just, I feel like with a lot of Star Wars, we go to an exotic planet for 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, depending on the medium, and we're just there, and we get it's kind of like getting a postcard of that planet. It's like, oh, it's cool visuals. We don't really know much about the culture and stuff, and that's why I've always enjoyed the video games, the comic books, is that you get to live in those worlds a little bit more and get to experience a little bit more of their cultures. Andor is the first time on screen, really, let alone live action, where I felt like I had an understanding of what this planet's culture was. So when the entire town basically starts taking part in warning Cassian and also threatening these police, I was like, oh, this is so fucking cool. And then from that point to the end of the episode was basically perfect for me.
Yeah, like I very much enjoyed that. I felt like that was a really cool idea. Like it was just a good episode. I feel like it really came into its own. It's just a shame about the first 2 episodes for me. Like, and as I said, I understand that it needed that for the payoff, but
I guess, would it be fair to say that if it was like one episode of that, you would be able to tolerate it a little bit more than 2 episodes? Because 2 episodes is what, like
yeah,
nearly an hour and a half at that point, right? They're roughly 45 minutes an episode.
yeah, because after the first 2 episodes, I remember me and Samo being like, "Do you want to watch the next one?" And we're like, "Might as well." And then, like it loads in, and we're both like, "Come on, something has to happen this episode.
Yeah.
Like, please have something happen." Um, and it did. It delivered.
Yeah.
Um,
I think ultimately where it comes down on is, from the sense of things, you're like, you enjoyed the third episode, you enjoyed some stuff from the first 2 episodes, but ultimately you're like, third episode really, really satisfying, not sure that it was worth going through the first 2 episodes for you, because you were a bit bored. Meanwhile, for me, I'm like, love the third episode, first 2 episodes are slow, but I'm totally fine with them being that slow. But I feel like maybe where both of us are at is, from the sounds of things, episode 4 onwards is going to pick it up quite a bit. And if that's true, I'm totally on board. If it kind of continues to rise from where episode 3 kind of left off, I'm on board. Is that fair to say?
yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I thought this was an 8-episode season, like Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. It's 12 episodes. That got me really excited, because when I was like, 3 episodes of 8, I was like, oh, that's a bit of a hard, like, I liked them, but that's a bit of a hard pill to swallow, like nearly half the season. Quarter of the season? Never mind, I'm on board, baby. Like, so yeah, it's apparently going to be 2 12-episode seasons. So they've already greenlit season 2 as well, and season 2 will lead straight into Rogue One, apparently. So,
Oh, sweet.
yeah.
I did totally just forgot what I was gonna say.
Talking about looking forward to the next couple of episodes.
Yeah, that was it. I was gonna say I probably would have watched them anyway, which is again what I said at the time. Like, because I know that we're gonna see Saw Gerrera, and like I want to see him, so I would probably have watched them regardless, just to get up to that point at least. But hopefully it will just continue being good, and I won't have to worry about being bored again until we see him. So
one thing I saw that someone made a point which was interesting is that the Saw Gerrera we see in this trailer for Andor looks considerably less fucked up than him in Rogue One. So we might actually see. Sorry, I hit my mic arm. We might actually see what fucks him up so bad. Which that's an interesting prospect. I'm assuming some sort of explosion, but because he's got like the breathing mask and he's got 2 cybernetic legs in Rogue One. I'm just checking. Son of a bitch. Why is Twitter so horny? I just tried to search there. Thank you. I tried to search BBY on Twitter to try and find what date it said it was in Andor's first episode, because it's the first time we've ever seen BBY on screen. Of course, BBY is also used as an acronym for baby, so there was many porn pictures I had to scroll through before I got to one about Andor. Luckily, it's not on the recording, so. It's set in 5 BB1, the first episode, so Rogue One obviously set in 0 BB1. I think, did you get to the episode of Rebels where Saw Gerrera shows up? Spoiler alert, he shows up in Rebels if you didn't know, but...
No, I don't think I did yet.
Okay, I think that's set in 2 BBY, and he doesn't have the cybernetics yet in that either, so... yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, they're spanning 5 years in the next... 21 episodes basically is the plan, so there's going to be a decent number of time jumps, which again indicates that there will be more kind of episodic stories. I think the other thing is, again with this build-up, I don't think this build-up in the first 2 episodes, or 2.5 episodes really, was just for the payoff in episode 3. what they've talked about with this show is that this isn't, although this is a show about Cassian Andor, this is equally a show about how the rebels, how the rebellion started, and specifically how people get radicalized. And I think we're going to see a lot of the characters that we got introduced to in those first 2 episodes returning in later episodes, but they'll potentially be, you know, years later, and we'll see how they've changed over the years and how they potentially become even more radicalized. In the trailers, we've briefly seen what appears to be Cassian returning to that planet, but with less of a beard, so potentially years later. So I think those characters are going to continue to play a big part, although they might, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't show up next episode or whatever, but I am expecting them to make big returns, basically. Which... sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, but
No, not it.
You go.
Not it.
No. Fuck. I'm kind of changing topic, though.
That's fine.
So.
That's fine. All I was going to say, which it didn't need to go into a lot, is that I like, again, when we're talking about like more adult themes, the idea of exploring how people get radicalized is also like a very adult, mature theme to explore. But it kind of has always felt like there's a side of Star Wars that needed that, because they are the rebels. They are essentially, in the view of much of the galaxy, probably, especially the Empire, will paint them this way, they're terrorists. You know, they are attacking the establishment. So, yeah, I'm excited to see, particularly in the political climate that our world is in today. You know, I don't know if you've been seeing like what's going on in Iran, for instance, at the moment, telling a story about how, like, okay, lots of people are rioting because not to get too serious from real world and linking it to Star Wars, but I do think that, you know, stories and media have the potential to relate to very real world problems. Obviously, this is much more serious than what we're seeing in Star Wars.
Actually,
a woman got beaten to death by, I don't know what the official term is for it, but basically the police who enforce women wearing hijabs and such like. And they arrested her and then beat her, and then she died in a coma. And so people are now rioting against the establishment in Iran. And, you know, it's just telling stories about how like people get to that point. I think, you know, it's prudent, basically, and very adult. So, yeah, I think it's very relevant, and it was very relevant before what's happened in Iran. It's happened in Iran because, in general, I feel like politics is getting more and more extreme, and people are slowly becoming more and more radicalized on both sides of the political spectrum. But particularly in the wake of that, I feel like it feels very relevant. So, yeah. Anyways, you were going to say something probably far less doom and gloom.
It depends on how you look at it. I mean, yeah, I guess going off the back of what you said earlier about, you know, the police brutality and stuff like that as well. Something from the first trailer, I think it was, where Andor is, you know, kind of explaining how he got the Star Unit, which was, you know, he just kind of pretended to be one of them and walked right in.
They're so fat and satisfied. They could never believe that someone like me could walk into their house. Yeah, I love that quote.
Yeah, and like
it's in both the trailers.
And, yeah, and you know, they talk about basically how they're so arrogant and just don't think of, you know, anyone but themselves. Yeah, that, you know, I love that. Like, seeing it again, I kind of forgot about it from the trailer. But I really loved that conversation. And I think it goes so well with like the incompetence shown by the corporate sector as well, and just like the
and corruption, because the main guy is like wants to sweep it under the rug, sort of thing.
Yeah, and you know, like as you said, this guy in his mind wants to investigate the murder of
two police officers,
2 employees, because he believes that is what is right, you know.
And I think we can objectively understand that point of view, even if he goes about it in incredibly the wrong way. Like,
yes, exactly. Yeah. He still deserves death, but like, we get it, you know.
Also, can I just say, I know it's not. I've looked up who the actor is. I can't remember the name now. But when I was watching that, when he came on screen, I was like, "This is the most Ewan Rion looking fucker who's not Ewan Rion I've ever seen in my life." Like, immediately, I just. Rion's a very handsome man in roles where he is handsome, but my god, after playing Ramsay Bolton, he's just like one of the most repulsive looking people when he wants to be. And that guy walked on screen, I was just like, you're giving off Rion vibes right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
No
I
offense,
didn't think about that actually, but I see it.
They could play brothers.
They could. Damn.
Again, very handsome man when he's allowed to be hot with a six-pack and a little bit of facial hair in Misfits, but not as Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah, no. And also, yeah, I get creep vibes from can't even remember the guy's name. I just keep calling him the guy or captain. Don't even think he's captain.
No, the character's name is Cyril Khan. He's a deputy inspector.
Yeah, I'll just call him Cyril. That's a horrible. Yeah, he definitely gives me like creep vibes. But yeah, the fact that, you know, he, as you said, it's entitlement. He's so arrogant in his own ways that he thinks that his way is the only way forward, and that, you know, the way that he's going about this is correct, that he doesn't actually take the time to plan properly and,
He's
you
willing to
know,
break
come
rules.
up with, yeah, exactly, he's willing to break rules because he thinks that other people are already breaking the rules and he believes that's wrong. So he's a hypocrite as well.
He's a hypocrite, and also he's like morally righteous. But also, I think along with all of that, where I think he genuinely does think he's doing the right thing, I think as well, he's totally vying for a promotion, right? Like, he's totally doing this for his own personal ambition as well. Yeah, I think as far as villains go, like, such an interesting Star Wars villain, because again, it's like, it's so human. Like, he's such a just like a believable human sleazebag that it just, like, I love it, because we don't see those sorts of characters a lot in Star Wars. So yeah.
And I do really like him as a villain. Like, they made me hate him the moment he came on screen.
As soon as his
good.
commander was like, "Have you customized your uniform?" I was like, "God, this fucking dickhead." He's made his uniform fit him better. What a dickhead. Says me who used to roll up my uniform sleeves is different.
The room and stood there looking up, all nervous like. I was like, "This guy's a cunt." But yeah, like, I think he's a very good villain, and like, honestly, every time he was on screen, I was like, he's giving me Hux vibes, and but
a better Hux, I feel like.
Yeah, but I feel like Hux didn't.
Hux had a lot of potential, but like with many characters in the sequel trilogy, I feel like they
exactly,
what's the word, unrealized potential, but yeah.
And so now that, you know, hopefully this character's going to have a bit more time to shine, I feel, as you said, we're going to be getting basically Hux, but if his potential was realized.
Yeah.
And like, I read a comment from, well, it wasn't a comment. I read like part of an article the other day about Cyril, and they made a good point.
You say his name with such contempt.
Yeah.
I read an article about Cyril.
Fucking guy. Piece of shit. And they made a good point, which is he is basically their representation of like the prototype of the way the Imperials go, which is just like constantly thinking that their way is the only way, which through sheer incompetency and just like doing whatever they know, basically leads to like banal like brutality, basically. You know, like Imperials walking through the streets and like basically being like dickheads to literally everyone, even though they have no real reason to. Like even if you ask them, they wouldn't know why they were doing it. It's just kind of
a prime example of this.
They've been brainwashed.
And this video apparently is from 2014. So I just want to say that because it's like not a super relevant, like recent video. But I saw a video recently. if you can't tell, politically, I am left-leaning. So my Twitter occasionally has left-leaning political tweets on its feed. And one of the videos I saw recently, which was talking about policing and how lots of people are looking for police reformment or police defunding or just like rebuilding law enforcement entirely in America. And a lot of people are also calling for the same thing in the UK. This video was of an American police officer arresting a firefighter who was attending to a car crash on a motorway. The reason why he was arresting the fireman was because basically he wanted to question the fireman, and the fireman ignored him to continue helping people out of the crashed car that was on fire. And there were other firemen still attending to the fire, so hopefully the people survived. Again, videos from 2014. But the police officer went, "Oh, I've told you to come and explain what's going on, and you've refused to talk to me. I'm going to arrest you now because you're impeding my policing." And it's that sort of level of entitlement that some police, again, I'm not sure I fully agree with the statement, all cops are bastards, but I agree with the sentiment. Not the statement, but the sentiment, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I think, it's that sort of level of just like, or there was a TikTok recently where a police officer was saying, like, if I'm driving behind you, you should pull over into another lane to get out of my way because I'm a police officer. It's like that sort of level of like, just like, yeah, entitlement.
Yeah. And
like, I haven't had many interactions with police, but I think we've mentioned this on a podcast recently. Both of us have had an experience of police just telling us to move on when we're like teenagers hanging out with our friends in like town or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, you're hanging out on a bench in a park. You got to move on because I'm a police officer and I'm telling you to move on." It's just that like.
I don't think that was me.
Oh, okay. Either way, it's happened to me several times in my youth, and it's just like it's policing for the sake of policing. It's almost like a power trip sort of thing. Maybe it didn't happen on the podcast. Maybe I was talking to Cal about it and he said that happened with him. I don't know. Definitely happened with Tommy because Tommy hanged out in the same friends group. But
I know of one experience with the police that I had, which was basically meaningless. I won't get into it because it was just dumb. But like, and it was basically just over the phone, so doesn't really matter. But I do feel like I have met a couple of policemen like in a more obscure area, like down by like a little like stream where I think like a few at this point I was quite young, and some older kids basically used that spot to do drugs. And I remember one of the cops told me like not to like exert myself too much or something because it would give me a nosebleed. That's literally all I remember.
All right, okay.
You are frozen.
Yeah, you've been frozen for a little bit. Now you are pixelated. You're coming back into focus. I'm assuming you can't hear me currently. But yeah, the bottom line is, well, he can't hear me.
I think we're good.
Can you hear me?
For now? Yes.
So, yeah, to wrap it up, I think that, I don't think all police are evil or anything like that. I don't think that all police are corrupt or that all of them have this entitlement, but it's enough. It's enough, and it's enough of a broken establishment. I mean, when I lived in London, I had a Muslim roommate who was visibly, Middle Eastern and or Middle Eastern origin because he was British. But and multiple times when we were like taking the tube together and we'd get off at a train station, he would be stopped by police so they could search his bag. And I remember once saying to them, "Do you want to search my bag too?" And then they didn't. And then afterwards, when we were heading off to uni, he was like, "Hey mate, can you not do that in the future? Because it makes the situation more awkward and more tense than it needs to be." And I'm just like, it fucking sucks that he was just so used to it that it was just like, can you not like make it take, can you not make it more awkward than it already is? Like, to me, I was like offended for him, but at that point he's so fucking used to it that like it's just life at that point. I'm just like, that's fucked. It just is, you know? So, and I don't think that's a police officer being a bastard or being racist or whatever, but it's a problem with the establishment when we're just okay with targeting entire groups of people because of some things that happened at this point, you know, decades ago, frankly. When was the last, like, the stabbings on the bridges was what, 2017, 2016? It's not a decade ago, but still, you know, it's not frequent. It's not anything to do with skin color either. It's just fucking bullshit. Anyways, so yeah.
Yeah, but I get the feeling that Cyril is gonna get a promotion because that's
Probably.
the type of thing that the Imperials look for. He'll probably become
He will
just an
pin
actual
it.
Imperial.
He'll pin it on the Scottish fucker, won't he?
Probably, yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a decent time jump next episode, is the feeling I'm getting. Yeah. Also, in the trailer, we did see clone troopers on that planet, so there's definitely going to be more flashbacks as well going forward, which you might not like.
Yeah, and that was another thing that I thought of at the time as well, which is probably another reason that I found them boring, was as soon as it like went to a flashback, I was like, oh fuck, there are flashbacks. Like,
you don't like time travel, and you don't like narrative time travel either. It's got to be a straight arrow.
I mean, yeah, really. I don't know. There's just something about flashbacks that I feel like it's a bit tacky.
I think good flashbacks and good non-linear narrative storytelling can really, really work, but also flashbacks can be really lazy and just like a shortcut. I personally don't get the sense that Andor is using flashbacks in a lazy way. If in general, Andor doesn't feel like it's hand-holding at all, which I like. But yeah, so I think that all of these flashbacks have a purpose, and the sense I'm getting is that this purpose is going to be just further explaining why someone like Cassian Andor has become radicalized to the point of deciding to spend his entire life fighting the Empire. Because I think, you know, the vast majority of people in the Star Wars galaxy at that stage would be either fine with the Empire because it's not directly negatively affecting them, because the equivalent of, you know, rich and white, probably not necessarily, they might be not white, but like the equivalent in the Star Wars universe of just being privileged, born on Coruscant and in the upper levels, that sort of vibe. You'll have the people who are corrupt and directly benefiting from the Empire, and then you'll have the people who are apathetic. Okay, they are negatively being affected by the Empire, but not enough to do anything about it. And then you'll have the people who are, you know, non-caring enough. I don't think the quote's actually in the film. It's in the trailer, but maybe it's in the film because I haven't seen it in a while. But there's a quote from Rogue One where Jyn Erso says, I don't care what flag is flying from the flagpoles, like, doesn't make any difference to me. Talking about, you know, the Empire's flag flying, it's just like, doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't affect me. My life's shit either way, basically. So to get those characters who are then radicalized and willing to fight the Empire, yeah, I feel like spending the time showing us why they get that way, I think like that's both the intent of the show and also a worthwhile thing to do. So, having got the line from the trailer that I really liked, though, from Stellan Skarsgård's character, which is, the Empire's choking us so slowly we've begun to not even notice. Love that line as well. It's great.
Yeah. I don't really have much else to say on Andor. I'm just hoping that it continues being good.
One last thing I'll say, find it really fucking hilarious that some people on the internet are pissed off about the politics in this show, and it's the typical thing of people not getting the message of Star Wars. I've literally seen people be like, hold on, Cassian killed 2 cops, and now the cop character's going after him, and we're supposed to think the cop character's the bad guy. And I'm like, not necessarily supposed to approve of the morals of Cassian in this sequence of events, but the cop is a cop for a fascist empire.
And also
And the ones he shot
the
were
two...
trying to rob him.
Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly.
It's just, I feel like a lot of people are not getting the points that Star Wars has always been very political, and the Empire are the bad guys. Funnily enough.
It's not a coincidence that the stormtroopers are called stormtroopers.
My favorite reaction whenever people start complaining about Star Wars being political is that then people point out it's always been political, and that George Lucas has multiple times said that the first Star Wars film is an analogy for the Vietnam War, where the Empire is America, and people have been like, that's not true, and then they go, here is the interview with James Cameron where George Lucas says that verbatim, and they go, still not true. It's like, you know what, fine, it's fine. Okay, cool.
Delusional.
Yeah. You know what? If you decide that Star Wars isn't for you because you don't agree with those sorts of politics that have been in Star Wars since day one, there is the door. Bye-bye. I don't give a shit. Anyways, I now want to run a Star Wars story where you're playing rebels. I mean, I've wanted to for a while, but I've got 3 Star Wars campaigns planned at the moment.
Fucking hell.
One of them being
Leviathan
Season 3.
How do you find the time to do all
when
of this?
When I say planned, I don't mean like I've built maps of them or anything. I've gone, that's an idea, and then I write it in PB Secret Ideas land, and then I will come back to it in a year.
Right.
Probably a year, especially because I've decided that, assuming I still want to run Cyberpunk in like 6 months, Cyberpunk is what's next after Sundered Empire, because it was a split vote. So
I'm cool with that. As long as I get my fix of D&D first.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. Should we end it?
Fucking end it, Alex.
Yeah, pussy.
Trigger doesn't actually pull. It's glued in place.
Damn. It all finally could have been over.
Also, just real quick, talking about the police officers just being incompetent, most blaster pistols have stun settings as well in the Star Wars universe. So that one guy who killed Tim, like, not just that level of incompetence of him, like, firing when he didn't need to, but also, like, ooh, glad that one died.
Yeah. Hope to see them all dead.
I hope the Scottish one survives.
Hope he fucking doesn't.
I hope he loses his job and then Cyril gets promoted. But then, like, a couple of episodes later, we'll get a scene with him where he goes, that bastard made me lose my job. That shit-eating bastard.
It's crap.
All right.
Okay, he can survive as long as something happens to his vocal cords.
Jesus, okay. We were just over or just under 3 hours before we started talking about Andor because we'd forgotten about Andor, and then Andor discussion happened and we're nearly at 4 hours again. How does this happen?
Oh, it feels like a short episode today as well.
It was until we talked about, like, literally I was like, oh, we're coming in a decent time for once, and then
We'll be better at some point, maybe. Oh damn! Pulled the trigger.
It's alright.
Devil trigger.
Set to stun.
Shut the cyber fuck up, you gonk, and listen to the Higgledy Piggledy podcast.
Forgot to say like, favorite, subscribe. Favorite's not a thing. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Forgot to say that at the beginning. We got started really quickly, but forgot to say the most important thing. If you like this video, blah, 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 blah. I'm not fucking saying it anymore.
Well, you said it now. Don't need to say it again.
I'm never saying it again, Alex.
Oh,
Our audience is old enough and mature enough to know what the fuck to do on YouTube if they like a video.
true.
And I know that for a
Unless you're-
fact because we only have 2 viewers. And I asked them how old they were. Anyways,
Oh, man.
bye-bye.
Goodbye.